Okay, we're back. Hopefully, we fixed the issues. Mm. Quality seems better, but move around in game so I can let you know for sure. Okay, sounds good. Give me 1 sec. .1080p is enabled on Twitch. Oh, thank God. Okay, we should be in the clear. Oh wow, all the all the viewers came back. Let's go. I hate ending stream. Okay, we will go back. I'll just run around this map quickly just to see what it looks like. I hopefully this looks better. God, streaming is such a finicky beast, isn't it? Okay, I'm throwing some spears. I'm moving around. How's she looking? It's a little muddy, but a lot better than before. Okay, we can work with the little muddy. That's okay. We can work with that. Hell yeah. You might be able to get away with 6,600. I'm scared, dude. I'm scared that that's gonna be like I'm scared that that's gonna be like the bump into the over bit rate. You know what I mean? Like I feel like I guess it doesn't hurt to experiment. Like we could always do like a quick test stream and see what it looks like. Um, and then if it's not good, just pull it back. Minion ring. I think having a tiny surplus of packets would be fine. Yeah. Yeah, no, I feel you on that. It's all good. It's all good. As long as it's working and it's 1080p, then that's all that matters. That would have been a shame if you weren't in here saying that and like I got into the pod. I mean, I guess I'm not. I don't know if a lot of people actually watch the podcast like video portion of it. Um, but like for the people who are enjoying the video portion of it, it would have been terrible. I normally like to level my new characters. Like I'm going to play them end game to kind of get a feel for how to progress and whatnot. Then I play around with Stomping Ground Rate. It's actually dude, I used to do that too. I used to like plan a build and then play the game through as that build and like, you know, hit the milestones like beat Act 1, beat Act 2, see how the build is going and stuff like that. And my buddy Cal Tarak actually does that for all of his build guides. But dude, I've been running through Rake Stomping Ground for my new character, like my Lua monk on hardcore. And dude, it's like you're literally AFKing through the campaign. Are you gonna make some dinner? Good luck. Yo, thank you again for your help, man. I appreciate you. We are gonna run one more map here, guys. Actually, no, we should be ready to hop on the call anytime now. All right, guys, we're gonna hop on a call with Slaydra right now. Cuts the campaign in half, dude. I ran through the campaign and probably it's gonna be probably like a 10-hour run, which is pretty quickly for my standards. Hello?
Hey, can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir. How's it going, man?
Good, good.
Excellent. If you want to fire up the webcam, that would be super awesome.
Yeah, sure. All right.
Nice. All right, let's plug you in here. So if you tune into my stream, you'll be able to sort of see the setup. Just looking pretty good right out the box. If I just um, scale you down a little bit.
Okay. Oh wait, is it backwards? Oh no, I think it's fine. So yeah, I have to have it backwards in OBS for it to appear
Classic.
correct on here. Yeah.
Classic
You know.
OBS issues. I've been just experiencing my own plethora of OBS issues. Essentially, like I followed the strict instructions of of Google, being like, how can I get the best like recording quality? So I bumped up the bit rate and I changed a few settings, but I made the bit rate too high, and so it started streaming at like 720p, and I was like, what the fuck? Everything's set to 1080, like all this crap. And then so I just like troubleshot it with my friend, and now we're guys, we're back. We're back at HD for the pod. But yeah, there were some technical difficulties on my end beforehand.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
So how does that look for you?
Let me go check real quick.
Let me know if you're happy with that.
Looks perfect to me. I don't know if it needs to catch up. Oh, actually, I think I have a Twitch ad, but I think
my bad.
I actually might need to set it up as like I can reflect it because I think it's backwards on yours, but I can do that on my end.
Sure, if you want to do that, that's fine.
I just have to wait for the stream to catch up. But
No worries.
Is it backwards for you? Like, as in, I guess the easiest way to tell is there's like a
So
subscribe,
on my
and it's,
stream,
like,
you're
backwards.
facing to the right. So it's whatever preference you have.
Okay. Okay, yeah, I can flip this. Okay, let me transform.
Give us 2 seconds, guys. We're just going to do some quick visual changes, and we will get started. Okay, I have 111 gigs of storage, so I can definitely record this.
I guess it's fine. It won't let, for some reason it's not letting me change the
It's all good, bro. If it's doesn't bug you too much, we can just keep it as that.
No, it doesn't really matter.
I feel like your background like matches the aesthetic of the podcast too. You got like the yellow or the red YouTube pillow and like the red sort of like wallpaper in the back, so no, it looks proper.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I think we're fine.
All right, dope. All right, so I'm going to do a countdown, hit record, do the cheesy YouTube intro, and then we'll get started with the pod. Are you good to go?
Sounds good. Good to go.
All right. 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Passive Tree Podcast dedicated to talking about life, Path of Exile 2, and everything in between. I'm your host, Blazeworks TV, and tonight on episode 13, we are joined by an ARPG content creator and streamer. Please give a warm welcome to Slaydra. Welcome on, and how the heck are you doing, man?
I'm doing good. Just pretty much been grinding Diablo 4's new season. Then also looking forward to doing maybe a little bit more Path of Exile, as I just finished all of the brand new like bosses that they added for the most recent like Mercenaries League. So been grinding both of those games mainly. But I'm still also interested in checking out other action RPGs, like everything from smaller like titles like Slowmancer to if Wolcen, Wolcen 2 is actually becoming a thing. It's still made by Wolcen Studios, but it's called something else. But there's going to be another Wolcen title.
That's crazy. I've actually never played Wolcen, but I've only heard like good things from like it's kind of like more of like a niche like ARPG, but That niche community really loves that game, and as an ARPG enjoyer myself, I'm all for it. So yeah, it sounds like if you're an ARPG enjoyer right now, you're eating good. You got a new season of Diablo 4, you got a new expansion for Path of Exile, Secrets of the Atlas, and then obviously like the new PoE 2 stuff coming out in August. There's plenty to eat for any person who's enjoying ARPGs. But before we get into ARPGs, I want to get into a bit of lore, something that we do. Basically, every episode of the podcast, I like to ask my guest sort of more personal questions to sort of get to know you a little bit better. So I want to jump into the first question here. What was your first foray into gaming? What were you playing as a kid? Was it PC? Was it console? I would love to hear that story.
Okay. So I actually started off with console, everything from Super Mario, Sonic, to even some like light RPGs like the earlier Final Fantasies. But to be honest, Diablo 1 kind of changed up everything. After Diablo 1, Duke Nukem 3D, there was no real going back to the what I call kids games. When I was younger, I would look at other games and be like, this is stupid now because like we had Diablo and Duke Nukem. I didn't want to go back to these games where it just felt too childish. So Diablo definitely shaped up what I enjoy a lot more. But I still enjoy Mario, and I think that those games are genuinely still pretty good as far as like having fun. But it just opened up the doors to more mature titles for me personally. So that was kind of like my intro to gaming was like basically platformers because that's what was coming out at the time, like Crash Bandicoot, Spyro, like all those games for the PS1 and 64. I enjoyed a lot of those, even like Gex. I play a lot of games. I don't really have any limit as far as like what I play, with the exception of sports titles. So anything from like horror to puzzle to turn-based games, RTS. I actually played a lot of StarCraft as well. StarCraft 1 and 2. So I play lots and lots of different games. Here's the Storm, Overwatch, Marvel Rivals. So I do it all of it except for sports games.
That's funny how you draw the line at sports games. It kind of reminds me of how people talk about like music. They're like, I like everything. I like hip hop. I like R&B. I like soul, but I hate country. Everything but country. It's kind of like that same vibe. You know what I mean? And I actually fall into that same category too. I tried to get into like FIFA. I used to live in like Singapore for a couple years, and all the homies that I had in Singapore were all like gamers, but they all loved playing like FIFA. Like that was like the universal game. You go anybody's house and they're just jamming it. And I just never could get into it. I was always down to play like something else, you know? I also played like Duke Nukem 3D when I was a kid, and there was something magical about hopping on a game that you knew wasn't for your age. It was like you were doing something bad. It was like a bit
Uh,
exciting that you had that sort of like, ooh, I'm not supposed to be seeing these like strippers dancing on this pole, but I'm here. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Yeah, that's good, man. So tell me, you listed off a lot of games that you were playing as a kid. What were the, if any, this is a tough question, by the way. What were any monumental games from your childhood, your teenage years, or your formative years that left a lasting impression on you as a gamer?
Okay, so first off, Diablo 1 for sure. Uh, but then also, I would say Mega Man X for the Super Nintendo. Being able to get so much stronger by progression, right? Like you'd get like these armor pieces, you would get like different like weapons, and then having the mindset of like before you go in and you fight like the boss, it's really hard the first time. But then towards the end of most of the Mega Man X games, you have to fight like all the bosses all at once without really getting to reset. You have like a certain ways to kind of heal with like the energy tanks, but for the most part, it's that idea of you becoming stronger, not only via like stats, but then also growing as a player because you get so much better. And I think that that is a pretty big deal. But I'd say Diablo 2 playing that online for all the social interactions was a pretty big deal too. Like Diablo 2 specifically on Battle.net back in the day was like every single day coming home from school, nothing really mattered. As soon as I got home from school, it's just like Diablo 2, Diablo 2, Diablo 2. That's all I care about. It's like, oh, I'm gonna try this crazy build, whether it was like the werebear sork or like the you can there's a werewolf barbarian build. Like I built like all the stupid stuff just to play more of the same game. So that game gave me crazy amounts of time to dump into. And like before, it wasn't like that with video games. Sometimes you'd go to a video game, you play it for like an hour, and that was kind of it. You had a little bit of fun, and that's what a lot of video games were at the time. And we didn't have like game trailers that we could just go into the internet and look up. It was like, oh, you would see a video in a well, you'd see the screenshots of the video gameplay, and then you'd have to look at the back of the video game to decide if you wanted to make your purchase. But Diablo had so much more content, specifically like 1 and 2 at the time. But other games that I really enjoyed, like Dark Messiah Might and Magic, as I think one of the most underrated games. It actually has really good reviews. However, it I guess didn't make it as far as I don't know if it was sales or licensing because uh, Ubisoft, I believe, had the license at one point, but then it was changed or transferred over. But that game was really good. I think what happened was Elder Scrolls overshadowed it. I still think to this day that if people played that game, they would want to see a sequel. It's kind of like that game Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance. Huge fan base that really enjoys that game. But if they did make a sequel for either of those games, I think it would do phenomenal. But yeah, licensing and other things could probably prohibit it. But I would say, yeah, those two games in particular, and also StarCraft 1, because StarCraft 1 had these settings called like user map settings, where you could basically have these custom game modes, and you could play Diablo inside of StarCraft 2 right now. You could also do it in StarCraft 1, but it's not the same. You don't have the same amount of tools. But back in the day, you could play. There was like different like tower defense games. There was defense like variety of games, and there's also different PvP. That's how Dota started, which was from like a game in StarCraft, which was called Aeon of Strife. So there's so many different things with like the user map settings in StarCraft 1 that I think would probably be a crime not to put on that list. So yeah. And then also I really, really like Devil May Cry, like all of them. I think those are all really excellent games too. But yeah, I would say those games come to my head. And also I really like puzzle games, specifically like Portal, ones where it like action requires brain activity. Because as much as I enjoy action RPGs, a lot of the time that you spend in the game after you get your build, right, which is like the part of like the thinking process of like, okay, which one is going to min max better. But now you can just throw into path building and it'll mathematically calculate, which the best for the most part. It's almost always accurate. You can tune out, right? You're just kind of less like rapidly shooting, and then the dopamine hits when you hear your loot filter having a drop. So for the most part, you're zoning out. Whereas with a lot of these puzzle games that interact your brain or like engage your brain, I like that a lot. Like even like horror games like Resident Evil, or I've been playing another one recently called The Killing Antidote. There's a lot of stuff that like requires you to think. Like some of the writing on the wall will have the password to something you have to open up, and you have to like think about it. Whereas with action RPGs in general, most of the time, again, you're tuned out. You're just like shooting stuff until it dies. There's not too much brain activity. It's a more relaxing experience. So I like having that moment of you're not going to progress unless you actually think, and you never really hit that with action RPGs unless like you're running like maybe a really bad build, especially with Diablo. There's an issue with Diablo
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
sure,
Yeah.
where like with Path of Exile, you can make the build better, like for the most part. But with Diablo, there are certain skills that are just like no matter what, you're not really going to the end game playing that specific build. So yeah, I think those games would definitely deserve shout outs.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, thank you for sharing all that. I think we probably come from a very similar generation. We have very similar gaming history. Blizzard Entertainment is like single-handedly responsible for giving me like the majority of my like formative, like very impactful games on my childhood. Like some of those monumental titles you mentioned. Diablo 2, still my favorite game of all time. I've said that on the podcast pretty much every episode. Everybody knows I love D2. I always will. I go back and play that game every year. StarCraft, you mentioned custom games. Like that was so peak back in the day. Like playing not only like ladder stuff, but also like, if you wanted to hop off ladder and have a more chill vibe, playing like Tower Defense or Nexus Wars or something like that. Like all of those game varieties were just like it gave that game so much more longevity because there's so much more to do in that game as well. So yeah, super cool to hear that sort of we share a shared history, especially with Blizzard. We're going to talk about Blizzard more later on in the podcast in sort of a more modern context and a more modern lens. But there's a question I want to ask as sort of a follow up. So now that you're not a child, and now that you're not sort of playing, StarCraft 1 custom games on like dial-up internet, how do you find balance between your life's responsibilities, your gaming, your content creation, and all of the things that life has going on?
Well, for me though, I can pretty much do this full time if I want to. But I still think that there is a balance between being able to enjoy yourself with other video games. I know burnout is a pretty big issue for content creators, especially ones that lock themselves to one game for good reasons, though. Because if you start streaming other games, you're going to lose viewership. People are like, "Oh, do you quit the game?" And it happens every single time for a lot of content creators. Because I talked to a few of them, and we talk about like when we swap from Path of Exile to Diablo, sometimes your fans will genuinely get mad. They're like, "Did you quit the game? Why aren't you playing this game? Do you hate this game now?" And it's like, no, I can enjoy both. But for me personally, I play a lot more variety. So it is definitely bad as a content creator until you grow to a crazy point, like as in that you can stream whatever game and it doesn't become an issue. It is definitely something that I would say that leads to content creators burning out because they feel forced because if they stream a different game, they get way less views. And it even happens when you do like sponsored content too. But for sponsored content, people have the mindset of, oh, he's just playing it because it's sponsored. And sometimes that is done genuinely true. But sometimes there are sponsored games that I genuinely think are really good. Like there's a game called Origami that I thought was really good. Guild Wars is another title that I did sponsored content for, and I genuinely like Guild Wars. But if you branch out too far from, I guess, that one game that you're working on for content, yeah, it definitely will hinder you. But I know your question was probably more along the lines of like doing things outside of gaming. So I would say it depends on where you live. Some people are introverts and they don't really like doing things, but I think for me at least, I really enjoy traveling. Like I went to Thailand earlier this year, and man, that place is like the greatest place to travel. If you ever want to travel anywhere, there's no other place uh, than Thailand. After you go there, there's no point of going pretty much anywhere else.
That's
But
sick, dude. Yeah, I've
yeah,
been to Thailand a bunch of times actually. So when I lived in
okay,
Singapore, I was on a traveler's visa. And so what that meant was I had a month to stay in Singapore and then I had to go out of the country and then come back in and they would reset my visa. Dude, I did this for like 2 years. Somehow they didn't catch
okay,
on. But so I used to go all over Southeast Asia. As you know, there's a lot of different countries that are sort of, a short flight away. You can get like there and back for like $100 to Thailand, Vietnam, Indonesia, and all that stuff. So dude, I went to Thailand so many times. Like, I did a big trip with like, my homies. And then I did a big trip with my lady. We went to like, Koh Tao is a place that we stayed at, beautiful little island. And yeah, it's a special place, man. Really, really special place. I love Thailand. Whereabouts did you go when you were in Thailand?
I flew into Bangkok and then pretty much just stayed in Pattaya and Bangkok because I enjoyed Pattaya a lot. That area is just it's always got something going on, and I like that. Same thing with Bangkok. I went over there and did some Muay Thai. That was very enjoyable. Also, which was really fun because I live in California. We have very strict regulations on like what kind of guns you can own and fire. But over there, you didn't even need to pass any sort of like test. You didn't need to do any training. They're just like, you want to go shoot guns? Go pick out your gun, man. And it's pretty crazy. Like, just the stuff that you can do in Thailand compared to the US is mind-boggling. So if you
100%.
ever
That's why
want
they call
a good
Bangkok
trip,
Sin
yeah.
City, man. Like that's the like anything that you want to do in Bangkok, you can do. You know what I mean? Like it's a
Yeah.
whole different planet, bro. And I encourage you, if you had a really good time checking out like Thailand, go check out some of the other Southeast Asian countries. There's a lot of cool cultural stuff going on in places like Vietnam and places like Indonesia and stuff like that. I'm actually half Indonesian, so I'm biased. I love Indonesia, but
Oh, okay.
yeah, like yeah, Southeast Asia is an amazing place, and I want to go back like every winter because up here in Canada, it's pretty damn cold, and so it's nice to go retreat to a place that's like really hot all year round. I miss that so much.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
yeah. So one thing I wanted to talk to you about before we get into ARPGs is what I like to do before I have a podcast guest on is look through their oldest videos to see where they got to start and what they were doing content wise at the beginning of their journey. And so When I went to your channel, I saw a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh content, and I honestly hadn't thought about Yu-Gi-Oh since I was in elementary school, and I used to play all the time with my friends and collect cards and stuff like that. And then it got banned at our school because all we did was talk about Yu-Gi-Oh and
Yeah.
and so we weren't allowed to bring Yu-Gi-Oh cards to school anymore. The same thing happened with like Beyblades and all these like different fads that we
Oh
had in
yeah,
elementary
Beyblades
school.
were awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, man. So tell me a bit about your Yu-Gi-Oh card start. What was going on? Tell me a little bit of a story behind how you got started in content with Yu-Gi-Oh.
So I used to play it on the Game Boy. It was actually a really actually I should probably give that game a shout out to on the Game Boy Advance. That was another pretty big game for me personally because that was another game where it's like normally you buy games and again you spend like maybe 10 hours in a game, you beat it, whatever. But like that game, I probably spent hundreds of hours in it. But then I got into like physically playing the card games. I played for a while and I just enjoyed it. And normally you have to play in a physical card form. The online form of that game was like it was so terrible. One, just like any card game, you had to buy the cards online, but then they wouldn't update the game. It was always behind. And then the worst part is you'd have to buy these like little like passes so that you could actually play. So not only did you have to pay money to play per duel, but then you also had to pay money to get the cards. So like it was you're getting like taxed two times in the game, and then it was
Damn.
always behind. They wouldn't update the cards, and then someone made an online version called Dueling Network, and it was all free, and you would have to interact just like you would in real life. Like as in you could cheat on the online game because it was just you physically just moving little pictures and I thought that was really, really cool. And then they had all the cards unlocked too. So when anything came out, it was first on there. Heck, it's still the same way. The newest Yu Gi Oh game is still outdated. You still have to pay for the cards, but the online version, which all the competitive players play, because I used to travel to actually play, they would have like these tournaments. But to be honest, it's a big time and money sink. Unfortunately, the prize pool is still pretty weak for the game. Like, you would have to go to these regionals, and then if you won the regionals, you would qualify to play in nationals. And I've done that. I qualified to play in nationals, but you have to pay for your own flight, and your Yu-Gi-Oh card deck's like near $1,000. And then obviously you have to pay for your own hotel. They don't pay for that, and it's not worth it. Even if you win, like winning to qualify for nationals gets you a mat that you can resell for like $50, and that's kind of the area where Yu-Gi-Oh really lacks compared to like Pokemon or Magic, where they actually support them. Nowadays, you can also get like for a long time it was like a joke that you would always get a Nintendo Switch. That was like their big prize pool was that like you'd spend hundreds of dollars for the hotel, travel, and then your deck. Um, and then you would come home with a Nintendo Switch. but
Yeah, it's like going to a professional like gaming like if you're playing like Counter-Strike or something and you're bringing your PC and you're flying there and then you win like a
yeah.
keyboard. It's like, boys, like my PC setup is worth like 5K and I'm winning a keyboard. Like, what's going on here? You know?
Yeah, it's pretty unfortunate, but, I kinda moved away a little bit from that game. I still check it out once in a while to see, like, what they're coming up with, but it's a huge time sink because you have to learn so much because they come out with a new set so frequently, and there's 100 cards in a new set, and then you have to know all the rules because some of the rules don't follow other rules, and there's very specific, like, wording, just like in Magic: The Gathering, if anyone's played that. Like, you have to know, does this work with this? Because it's not super straightforward, and because there's not, like, an official online game that plays similar to, like, physical cards, it's a lot different. Because playing in person and playing online are very different because online, it's so much more relaxed, you don't have to really pay attention as much, whereas if you're playing in person, uh, almost all the Yu-Gi-Oh! Like, top level players, eh, some of the best players even said, "Everyone cheats on here, everyone cheats," and sometimes it's on accident, but there's been a lot of, like, even top level tournaments where people just get caught cheating, on purpose, like, they'll, like, take an extra card or they do a lot of crazy things in Yu-Gi-Oh! Sometimes they'll attack 2 times, and this has happened at the highest level, of tournament play where the judges just don't catch it, and, it's unfortunate, and sometimes it is on accident because there's just so many rules to the game. But, I would say that's kind of where most of my earlier stages of careers kinda started as far as, like, content creation. Definitely, and I did upload a lot of Diablo back in, like, Diablo 3. back when it was without the expansion. I played a lot of that as well, and then I played a lot of Overwatch as well. Streamed mostly a lot of Overwatch for quite some time, and then kind of got back into Diablo once Diablo 3 started having much better seasons because the earlier season in Diablo 3 were pretty rough compared to like what we were getting towards the later stages of like season like 20 and beyond. We got a lot better content. Heck, I still think the Diablo 3 seasons are very, very strong, even though now we don't get newer forms of content.
Interesting. Well,
Uh,
thank you for
yeah.
sharing that part of your Yu-Gi-Oh journey. I definitely wanted to ask about that because it's just something that you don't see very often. It was something that for me was very much so like a childhood thing that I was very much into. I probably didn't even understand like the rules of like how to properly play because I think it was still quite complicated, like even back in like 2005 or 2006 or something like that. Like the actual format of how to play the game, especially for like a young kid. So appreciate you sharing that. So let's get into ARPGs, which is like the primary focus of this conversation. So I want to start off with Diablo. So you mentioned that Diablo 1 and Diablo 2 were sort of like your formative games, some of your like favorite games growing up as a child. Would you say that Diablo 4 is your primary game now? Although I know you kind of answered this, so you play a lot of games, but what about Diablo 4 has been holding your attention for as long as it has?
Well, as a content creator, you usually get feedback from what does well, right? Like it's usually, which usually is correlating to views, which also is incentivized for yourself for monetization purposes. So obviously that encourages you to play the game a little bit more. But what I like with action RPGs in general is trying to figure out more interesting builds that people don't play. Like Diablo 3 actually has a lot of interesting builds because there's two different things that enable just any skill to kind of be good. But with Diablo 4, interestingly enough, even though the game balance is out of whack, there was actually a lot of crazy builds. There was one build that I really thought was super unique that I didn't really see that many people talk about when it did exist was a Thorns Rogue. So I like action RPGs in general just because you can do a lot more weird things because there's maybe some sort of unique that enables some sort of different playstyle. And with Rogue, there used to be a item, I think it was Sky Hunter, where in the earlier stages of the game, it would always guarantee your first hit to be a crit. Now, normally in the earlier stages of the game, you could only play Thorns realistically on Barbarian. That was like the only class that could really utilize Thorns, but it was pretty terrible at the end game. And Thorns could never crit, but if you equip that bow on the rogue, you could actually crit with Thorns, which made the damage crazy, and you would one shot everything in the hardest difficulty, with the exception of some of like the things like Lilith. But you were able to walk around and everything would just one shot itself. And it was super cool because no one played it because it's like Rogue and Thorns, and you wouldn't even think to build it because the class doesn't inherently benefit off of it. But if you equip Razor Plate, which is like the thing that gives you Thorns, and then you also equipped that Sky Hunter before it got changed. You could crit with Thorns, and then the damage was just so much higher than anything else, and it was fun. So I like that. But as far as Diablo 4, right now the game is really trying to balance itself. It's crazy that we're this far in the game and there's so many skills that are unplayable. But at the same time, this almost makes it more interesting because you can take other things that people wouldn't think are good and actually try to figure out a way to make it like a little bit more obscure and viable to play versus if you look at how certain other games are designed. Like I'm going to take Diablo Immortal because it's similar in the sense where it is another Diablo title. But in that game in particular, all the skills all kind of have like some sort of damage, right? You take the skill, then you have like the skill does 100% of your character's damage. They're all relatively similar to that number. But with Diablo 4, the numbers are so crazy because you have these multipliers of like 80x, 100x, and I start adding these, and then it goes crazy because that's where the balance starts to really show that they don't balance the game in a sense where every skill is viable at endgame. Whereas if you look at Diablo Immortal or even Path of Exile, all the skills are usable for the most part. They're never going to be like absolutely just terrible to the point where it's impossible to beat the game. Whereas Diablo, yeah, it's pretty much impossible to beat the game with certain skills. So, uh, that's kind of what interests me as far as Diablo 4 goes. But there comes to a point where you've tried everything. Like I pretty much played every single build there is to play. Granted that it being a core skill and like you can actually invest into it. I've tried out every single one and I like that. but there comes to a point where like I've done everything, and then usually I end up start looking at other ways to improve the game as a Diablo partner. Uh, I always try to look at areas where they can make the game better because that helps the game itself, which gives the game a bigger life cycle, which improves my content and helps the Diablo team. Now, do they take all the feedback from all the content creators that are partners? Not necessarily, but sometimes things take time, and unfortunately, sometimes things take longer than we want. Because like I wanted a loot filter from like the start of the game, and it's just taken so long, and it's so weird to me that there's like very basic things, right? Specifically like loot filter, there's trade, leaderboards. Like we don't have these in an action RPG that's like a modern one. Like I to me that still doesn't make sense. We don't have a loot filter, but the way Diablo's design is you need to pick up all of the trash items, then you salvage it to get the materials. But you don't really want what's called like the non-ancestral pieces of gear. Just like in Path of Exile, most of the stuff that drops on the ground is garbage. So you don't want to see it so it doesn't clutter up your screen and waste your time to pick up essentially garbage because it's just getting turned into crafting materials. But with PoE 2's most recent update, I think that as long as you put it in a loot filter, you don't even have to really like customize it. You can sometimes just grab random yellow items and just be like, oh, let's just slam a couple exalts. It's got like one or two good stats. Let's see what happens. I think that that can be enjoyable for some people because like I've done it before and sold a couple items for a couple divines where you're just like, you just randomly pick up some yellows that are like marked because it's a high item level. So uh, going back to your question though, yeah, I would say right now Diablo 4 is my main game though. But there's definitely going to be a point, especially like now, like I've played every single brand new build now at the end game. So for this current season, which is season 9, after I play everything that's like meta and then drop like build guides on pretty much all the new stuff, uh, there isn't too much to do in Diablo, and then the content becomes okay. Well, let's go talk about what can we improve on the game. What are like the problems, the main problems? Sometimes people see it as negativity and complaining, but it's more so feedback for the developers to actually look at because we put like a hashtag that helps them look at it, and then they can decide if they want to implement what we think is a good change for the game. So. Uh, After a while with Diablo, I'm gonna play Marvel Rivals because they have a new season coming out. But my main game definitely is Diablo 4 in terms of like views and what people usually go to the stream for is usually Diablo content. But Path of Exile, it's kind of like a gray area for me right now because I play Path of Exile, I do. Uh, I can get to maps and I can do like Maven and stuff. Whereas some of the other Diablo content creators, like they play Path of Exile, but they never really like play it as in they don't really understand how to juice maps. They may not get to Maven. They kind of like do the campaign, they get to maps, and then that's kind of it. They don't push beyond like tier 16 maps. They're just I understand tier 17 maps are quite difficult, but they never do Maven. Maven's like the one area where I feel like it genuinely is pretty difficult, especially with the memory game.
Right. Okay. Okay. So to sort of in summary, basically Diablo 4 is your main game. You
Yeah.
enjoy basically playing it, blasting it, sort of navigating the different skills and the different abilities and synergies, figuring out sort of what the cool like off meta builds are. That's sort of where like your most enjoyment comes from essentially. I wanted to bring up something with you. So there's a creator. He goes by Rax. He came up with it. He put out a video recently called "A Message to the Diablo 4 Team from a Heartbroken Fan," and it was kind of a video that popped off right before the newest season of Diablo 4 came out, and he sort of to reflect your sentiment, it was sort of a feedback video, not necessarily being negative. It's actually very positive. It was just more so of like announcing his disappointment, but offering like clear solutions to some of the problems that he was experiencing within the game. Did you have a chance to watch that video? And what are some of the like biggest pain points for you in the game? I know you mentioned like the big three, the item filters, the excuse me, I can't exactly remember, but there's like yeah, leaderboards, item filters, and trade, which are something that we've all been accustomed to in modern RPGs. What are some of the other things that you may have issues with or pain points within the game?
So for me personally, I've been trying to get them to do PvP, and the reason why is there's an infinite replayability in PvP that you wouldn't really be able to get with other action RPGs. I know Path of Exile did try with like They had like a battle royale at one point, which was kind of cool. But I really want a good action RPG to also have PvP. But as far as some of the points that he made in his video, because it was a really good video, I think the entire Diablo community did see it. I actually did want to make a video response to it, but um, there was a lot of great points being specifically like the skill tree. Like he was talking about, like you fireball, you take this one or the other one, and then you just get onto the Paragon board and which one gives you the most numbers. He's absolutely correct on all of those. But as far as action RPGs go, all these number things become a little bit less relevant when a lot of people will have tools just to figure out what's the best one. And therefore, the creativity gets kind of lost, especially in Diablo, because again, the problem with Diablo 4 is that certain skills are so many times better. Like the best build and the worst build is too far separated. Whereas again, if you look at PoE, it's like, okay, this skill, let's say, does 100% of your damage. Okay, this skill does 90%, but then it gives you a debuff that buffs it up, so then it's worth it. So I would say that that is a big issue with Diablo 4. But also, it's that when the season comes out, and this is something that I want to say maybe Blizzard doesn't understand because they keep on releasing these powers. And the interesting thing with the powers is I genuinely think there is a lot of cool design in these powers, but the main issue is the fatigue comes with the actual powers being a repeat of what we already have. So one of them will, let's say, grant you a barrier. One of them will maybe give your character resources. They all feel a little bit too samey, where if you look at another game with its new seasonal content, like the mercenary system, I felt like Path of Exile swept the floor compared to Diablo. Like I was really hyped up about the mercenaries from the new expansion because in Diablo 2, the mercenaries give you a huge buff. You can have them like break resistances. You can have the mercenary carry the entire game. But in Diablo 4, when the mercenary came out, it was like, okay, you just have a 20x on a condition. It's like, okay, well, every once in a while, when the mercenary does his little special move, you get like a small little boost of some damage, which it's still cool, but it's not as much as what I think is impactful to the point where you're like, wow, I can't wait to get this new mercenary. I want to equip him with all these things, give me buffs, and then also be able to carry me and kill content. Whereas the Diablo 4 mercenary is so useless when it comes to like, if you stand AFK, can the mercenary kill anything? No, like never. Like unless it's like level 1 content. And that's an area where I think Path of Exile dunked on them. And what I find even crazier with the most recent like memories, right? That you have like you run like 4 maps and then you fight like a boss at the very end with the new system. That is literally the same thing as a Nightmare Dungeon escalation. Because in Diablo, we have Nightmare Dungeons and Path of Exile, you have maps. And their maps are just a lot more fun. And then you start juicing it as well. I would say in general, there's actually so many similarities with this most recent league where like they just looked at some of the stuff that Diablo did and just did it better. So for me, it's disappointing in a sense, but like I play both games. I genuinely like both games, and I don't care if games copy other games as long as it's fun. I think that's the bottom line. That's all I really care about. But I think that both games can be successful, and I genuinely again like both games. So when one copies the other, it doesn't bother me. But as far as pain points, going back to the original question, there's a lot of stuff that I think Diablo could add to keep people entertained past a week. Because the good players that have been playing, like the big hardcore fans, they can play for 2 to 3 days and they're pretty much done. All you're doing is slamming down the pits and it gets way too repetitive. If they add more incentives like a leaderboard for those people that are the top 1% that will grind again and again, that will keep them going because they're like, oh, my record just got beaten. I'm going to go grind for 10 more hours. Like that will keep those players in there. And strangely enough, streamers can make and break a game. I know that game Among Us, like that game grew in popularity and blew up because of streamers. So I know that there's some people that have the mindset of like, well, if the streamer doesn't play the game, who cares? That doesn't improve sales. But in reality, it keeps people coming back to the game, especially as a game as a service where you have new skins coming out. Because if your favorite content creator isn't like, maybe looking at the shop or he doesn't have a new skin, well, the player isn't going to be like, oh, I want to run that skin that he's running. So there's an issue with the amount of time that people will spend in Diablo. Like the the retention rate is pretty bad on Diablo in general, specifically 2 I'm sorry, 2 actually does it much better. But like 3 and 4, a good player that has been playing the game for a while will max out in a weekend, and then that's it. And then the content creator, I could definitely tell a lot of content creators in Diablo 4 get fatigued pretty fast. And I don't even think it comes down to making the game slower, which I think that the game has been trying to do. They're like, we don't want you guys to, chain farm these end game bosses, but then you make the drop rate of the mythic, which we need 3 of, like 1%. So what else are they supposed to do when you have like the item that only drops from this boss and it's a 1% drop rate? um, it doesn't really become as enjoyable, especially since every single season you got to do it again and again. Whereas with Path of Exile, I don't feel like, oh, I have to get a mage build, otherwise I'm not playing. With Diablo, like you need the certain pieces of gear in order for your build to function. So that can take lots and lots of tries. But that's
Totally.
another like pinpoint. Anyways, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just going to agree. So, just a little bit about myself in terms of my like history with Diablo 4. So, I was incredibly excited for Diablo 3, of course, with the 10-year lead up from the release of Diablo 2, and then, again with Diablo 4 being another basically decade since like Diablo 3 came out. And I played both, and I played both quite a bit. I haven't gotten back into Diablo 4 in quite a few seasons. I really enjoyed the vampire season when they sort of introduced those like powers that's sort of become a reoccurring piece of content for all of their like newer seasons going forward. But you're exactly right. One of the things that I sort of realized in the game was that there's not that sort of incentive for longevity because it's so easy to reach sort of a pinnacle of your character, of your progression. And that really is like getting those mythics, which, it's just involves farming, the same like bosses to the point where you find them, and then pushing like as deep in the pit as you can go, basically, or as fast as you can go. And it sounds like to me what you're saying is that you would enjoy another thing. Like Diablo, it kind of sounds like Diablo 4 needs another thing. Leaderboards would be great, but what if there was something else that like, end game players could engage with after they got their, unique or mythic uniques or something like that. And so I wanted to ask you, like, do you have any sort of like ideas maybe that like, could be like implemented as sort of like an additional end game system or additional piece of end game content that would allow for players to be more engaged in Diablo for longer than like a weekend or a week, basically?
Yeah, well, I think PvP will definitely encourage people to do that, but I think the team is kind of afraid that if they try to make a PvP season, that it's going to be too difficult to balance, and I totally get that. But I think that they need to at some point try it and then see what is too overpowered, and then just start balancing. Or you can have like the content creators try to balance the game. I think that that'd be an interesting thing. I know Overwatch had the content creators make like a balance patch, and they had it like it was kind of a separate thing. It wasn't in like the main game, but like you could play on kind of like what they saw as like a vision of the game in a sense, because they could kind of edit the characters a little bit. And I think that would be interesting for Diablo to have a either a season or do it as some sort of off mid-season event where they're like, we're gonna have content creator balance update. And so then you have all the content creators just tweak the numbers. Because I understand if you tell the content creators, what do you want to do? Change the game. And they're like, oh, I want 4 more classes. I mean, that'd be great. But I think for Diablo to actually hold people's interest for an extended period of time, PvP would be excellent. Leaderboards would be a good start. And I actually think that if they do make the progression a little bit smoother in the end game, because getting your glyphs to 100 is absolutely just a pain, and a lot of builds can't do it. So if they ease into that, and then also had a trade system, because a lot of people do not want to take a screenshot of their item, list it on a website, wait for someone to message them, connect their BattleNet, wait for the message, and then try to join them and add them as a friend. It is annoying, just like it is annoying in trading in Path of Exile 1 and 2, with the exception of Faustus, which is like, that mercenary where you can just trade your currency instantly, and it's the greatest thing ever. But if they added that in to the game, I think it would be a little bit better, because then people could be like, okay, I need this as my upgrade. And they can just go be like, okay, I'm gonna farm a bunch of gold or sell all these other items, and then I'm gonna buy the exact item that I need, and then I can continue progressing versus I don't really want to go bother and message a bunch of people that are never going to respond. It's just one of the most annoying things in Path of Exile as well. And so I think that could help out. But I also think Diablo needs just like more ways to do end game content. We had these like trap dungeons before. This was in season 3. And I think that the trap dungeons did allow for a little bit of creativity, because there's runs where you try not to get hit. And I think that they could have kept that in the game. I think that they need to not remove any forms of content because we desperately need variety in the game. To have the end game be, all right, slam 500 pits, it's not what I would consider ideal content. And the reason why is the difference between a pit 1 and a pit 150 is nothing. It's just a numbers game. So your damage goes up, but their HP goes up. So you essentially feel the same every single time. Like, yeah, you're upgrading your glyphs, but then you're also trying to go higher so you can upgrade your glyphs more. And even though that's part of an action RPG, right? You kill stuff, you get stronger, and you kill stronger monsters to get better loot. That's the issue where Diablo falls compared to Path of Exile. You do not really get better loot than a greater affix. Like you can't get anything beyond that. And there's too big of a gap between once you get that greater affix in like Torment 1, which is when they start dropping, and then you're going to Torment 4, and then you're also going through all, let's say on average, you're going through like 100 pit tiers because doing Pit 150, while there are some builds that can do it, it's basically unrealistic for most builds to even get close to it. So there isn't any like huge drive to, oh my gosh, I can't wait to get to the next pit because you're just doing the same thing. So I think fatigue is very real with D4. But with Path of Exile, I feel like you can always get like you can if you get a divine orb, it doesn't matter what pit tier it is, it doesn't matter what map it is. You're excited. You're oh cool, I can get an upgrade for my character. Versus Diablo, it's like you're just playing. And yeah, you could get an item to drop with a little bit higher stats, but it's not as exciting. There's not a big amount of dopamine. And since you mentioned Rax's video, one of the things that he mentioned that most of the points though I will say I like and I agree with, he mentioned that the items there wasn't any like big drop that you get excited about, and he was mentioning like the mythics, and he was saying that they can't be so rare that they never drop, right? Which is how the game used to be, like the Harlequin in the earlier stages. These items you could not make a build around because they were impossible to get. But he said that he wanted it to be like, well, every few seasons you might see one. I feel like for me personally, that is a terrible design because your average player will be like, I want to run this build. Okay, it requires these three mythics. Oh, I guess I'm not playing it. I think that a lot of people have evolved as far as time goes in any video game where they kind of want to get the stuff within a reasonable rate. Like back in the day, we could have these, super, super rare items in like Diablo 2 or Path of Exile 1. But nowadays, like if you compare how easy it is to get a headhunter nowadays versus way, way long ago, like several years ago, it's a lot different, I would say. Like people are much faster at doing things. So I would say having items be rare is kind of a cool thing the first time. Like if anyone's played Diablo, your first time getting a mythic, it was exciting. But because you reset every single season, to have an item be only dropping once every few seasons for your build, and you need it for your build, especially like things like Ring of the Starless Skies, which do enable builds to function properly because of the resource cost reduction. I would say that it probably isn't in the best interest of making items that rare. I think what you can do to make the dopamine still sort of exist, but not alienate any of the casual base, is to have that be a special skin. Like in Path of Exile, they have like the foiled skins, but they can have a different skin. So then the player still feels like, wow, I have this thing that no one else has, but it doesn't lock the players down. So I think skins, very, very rare skins that are super ultra rare, that's fine. But I think when you start making builds not function because it doesn't have the correct piece that everyone plays and has played also, because this is a thing that I think you can't go back on when it comes to action RPGs. You can't let someone do millions and billions of damage and then be like, wait, 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 we're gonna give you like 10% of your damage now. And the player's like, no, I don't want to play your game anymore. It's pretty bad. I know that that was a huge point of criticism from the most recent season, which was they nerfed a lot of the loot that was dropping in the game, and then players really didn't like that, especially because before you were getting so much, and it's like now you're doing the same thing for more time, but you get less loot. It's like, well, why would I want to engage in your system? And so I think that Diablo has already been bleeding players. And I want to say that perhaps their mindset was, okay, players aren't playing long enough. How can we keep them in the game? We'll just slow down their progress, which is not necessarily what I think works. I think to keep people entertained in the game, you can't make them do the same thing for longer. You got to actually add new content that people want to engage and play with. I think that's the biggest area that Diablo can improve upon is just throw out a bunch of ideas and see kind of what works. You can put up the trap dungeons before. You can add the malignant tunnels. You can add a little bit more mechanics to the malignant tunnels because they had this idea where you'd have like these different colored they were kind of like in some sort of family with the gem sockets, some malignant hearts. Just have all the systems, keep them all in there, and just see what players engage with. And then if players don't engage with them, either buff the rewards or make it easier to understand. Because Diablo 4 really excels as a casual action RPG. Because if you tell someone that's never played an action RPG, play Path of Exile, it's a bad experience. Whereas Diablo 3 and 4, I'd say it's a little bit easier.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm super happy that you brought up sort of the audience that's sort of enjoying both of these games. I think it's no secret that Diablo 4 and Blizzard are very much aware of the type of players that are sort of engaging with their game for the most part. And the same thing goes obviously for grinding your games with Path of Exile. One game is definitely more leaning towards the like hardcore, not necessarily in terms of actually, very much so, in terms of like knowledge and understanding and time investment on one hand with Path of Exile versus Diablo, which you can. I'm not sure how long it takes to get to max level now, but it's a very short journey to get there and like get your character on like a a pretty strong power level and stuff like that. So yeah, there's sort of you know divide between the casual player and the sort of the blaster or like the more hardcore ARPG player, and it almost feels like it's hard for one I guess player base to enjoy Diablo 4 now because it very much feels like they're tailoring the game towards like casual enjoyment. This sort of leads to like the last question that I'll ask about Diablo 4, but obviously there's a meme going around that has been existed basically since Diablo 4 came out. Everyone knows at D4 bad as the meme. I don't agree with this meme at all, but I do think that it's definitely affected the perspective of Diablo 4 within the ARPG community base. I wanted to know what your like feedback is or thoughts on this particular point of criticism, and if you think that Diablo 4 could sort of make a comeback to the point where that meme is no longer relevant anymore.
Uh, to be honest, I think when a game has a stigma around it, like if like a certain game is too pay to win, I feel like some of these things are very difficult to turn around. If I was in charge of Blizzard, I would not focus in on making any more expansions for D4. I would actually look towards Diablo 5. I think that that would be an area where um, you can make the investors happy because if you're coming out with, let's say, Diablo 5, 6, I honestly would be 100% okay if they make a good action RPG every, let's say, 1 or 2 years. I think that that would be actually more in the player's interest and in their best interest, not only for monetization, because the new expansion, I was expecting to see a lot more, because that was kind of where a lot of the Diablo games got so much better. Like, if you look at Diablo, not except for Diablo 1, that's an exception because Hellfire, there's a lot of bad things in Hellfire, but most people don't even consider Hellfire like part of the official game because it was made by Sierra. But if you look at like Diablo 2, the difference between the base game and Lord of Destruction, massive. I mean, we got so much more content. And then if you also look at Diablo 3 with Reaper of Souls, that really shifted up endgame. But if you look at like Vessel of Hatred, what did that do for the game? Okay, we got a new class. That's cool. Like that's kind of expected. It would have been cooler to get two classes, but hey, I'll take one. And then what else? Okay, the Citadel was a very weird theme because when they hyped that thing up. They're like, there's brand new thing. These are raids. You get to party up with people. You're gonna have to learn these mechanics. And the first time you do a raid, excellent. Like I would say that most people would give that like a 4 or a 5 out of 5. Like people enjoyed that. That was a good form of content. But you only do it once and then you're done. It's like, well, what is the new expansion going to add? And while they did add some small quality of life things, there's a lot of like awesome quality of life, like being able to favorite like an area where you teleport back to. Like these are great, but the core game desperately needs more content in order to keep people entertained. But the way that they're approaching the game is kind of interesting because they actually want this game to be a 10-year game and they're making it free on PlayStation. It's free on Xbox, and I wouldn't be surprised if the base game goes free to play eventually, which is a good thing. As a content creator, that's good for us because then we're like, okay, we got like so much more fresh blood because it recently went free on PlayStation, and so there's a lot more people interested in the game, and that is awesome. And so if they keep on releasing expansions, I'll be excited to play the expansion when it does come out. But unfortunately, there's not enough content in the last expansion from an endgame perspective. Whereas like you had a campaign, that's cool. I'm actually glad that they made a campaign, but instead of a campaign, I would rather have had just like 2 or 3 different forms of endgame content that would save them time and that would also improve the longevity of the game versus, oh, okay, we have a campaign that's voice acted. Again, it's great that we have it, and I wouldn't mind if we had that. But I think the most important thing is just add endgame. That is like the area where Diablo 4 desperately needs some sort of newer innovation in action RPG too. I'm not even talking about like some of the stuff that we've already seen. Like usually it's do some sort of thing to make the monster stronger and then it drops better gear. I'm talking about mind-blowing things that would actually make you think about a build. Like I'm thinking along the lines of more like, okay, in the expansion, let's say they come out with the next expansion. I don't want to just see a new class. I want to see new skills, a new class, and then maybe you can select a main class and your class can get a subclass and you can start equipping gear from another class that can interact with your character completely differently. I'm talking about brain activity here. Diablo 4 really lacks that. It's kind of like
Ooh, I
big
like
number,
that. That's cool.
big
That's a cool idea.
big number go up, good. And I think that we can do way more than just that. I want actual innovation in the action RPG genre. Uh, and
Hmm.
that's like one thing that like I really want to see come to Diablo and other action RPGs. Like I don't know if you ever checked out the game Undecember. That game actually had some really cool ideas because it was kind of like Path of Exile, where you have your main gem, and then you how it works is it's on a like a hexagon grid system, and you would put skills next to it, and it would be adjacent to it, and it would basically kind of be like a link in Path of Exile. And then you can have that skill be linked to another skill. Those are the kind of brain activity things that I think people want to see. It's basically the depth in the action RPG, but I know that Diablo 4 is in this situation where they want to be casual. And this was a thing that was an interview with Rax and some other person in the on the Diablo team, but they were saying a lot of the players will put 5 skill points into all of the basic skills. And it's like, why would you ever do that? Because people are dumb. And they just want to play the game. And I think that because they're so casual, they see the pop up of skill point and they're like, yeah, just whatever, push it in, or I won't get back to gaming. I think that they could maybe make it easier for them. Um, they can have it set up to be kind of like these action survivor roguelike games where it's like you level up and it has like two things, 2 or 3 things on the screen, and you just like press A, B, or whatever, and it'll just give you that option, and that way you can continuously play the game without really like making a really bad build by just, oh, this giant screen pops up, hit A, continue. And I think it was only like it was like 10% or something like that that actually make it to the end game of like Vessel of Hatred. It was like there's some sort of achievement on the Xbox, and it was like 10 or 20%. I just know there was a really, really low number of players that play Diablo that actually even make it to the end game. Whereas with Path of Exile, the completion rate before, at least for the achievement, it was like a 0.1% for people that actually do like serious Maven Shaper. Like these numbers are incredibly low too. So I don't even think it's necessarily just a Diablo problem. I think this is an action RPG issue where you have so many players unable to get to that point because modern gaming has gotten to the point where people want autoplay. This is kind of almost off topic, but I think autoplay is completely pointless in a video game. You play the video game to play, but I had recently this was actually a question last night when I was streaming because it came up since it went free on PlayStation. I'm guessing that's where the player came from. He's like, is there like auto loot and auto play? I'm like, why would you ever want this in a video game?
Yeah.
Like, don't you play the video game to play, not like
Yeah.
sit back and just watch? Like he
Yeah.
wanted the game to have I kind of understand auto loot where it's like it automatically picks up your gear and you can just hit like equip recommended is like a term in what is it like a lot of the mobile games will have equip recommended, and it's like don't you want to look at the piece of gear to see is this better than this? That's like the point of an action RPG. You kind of make a build around whatever, ice, fire, cold. You have to read to see which one's better, not like "Oh, whatever, just continue playing." And I think that defeats the purpose of an action RPG because at that point you just play a hack and slash game that you get no upgrades and other than numerical stats. But I think that modern gaming with the giant arrow of go here, this is where you need to go, and you can click auto path and it just keeps on going. I never understood how that was like enjoyable, but I think a lot of games, because people grow up with that being their game, whereas like growing up playing Diablo 1, you didn't get a giant arrow to tell you where to go. You had to explore. And I don't necessarily think that they need the games to be that free. I like the freedom. And I think that if you're lost, there could be maybe an option where you can kind of be pointed in the right direction. But I think the younger generation just kind of sees that as the norm in games. And if you make it too hard to the point where like they don't know where to go, they just have the mindset of, oh, whatever. I'm just gonna go play COD. I'm gonna hop on COD. This game sucks. I don't get it. Whatever. That is a big issue. So maybe they can look at making it easy for those players, easier, because it's still apparently too hard. Diablo actually added this system, which I was really surprised they added. They had like an instant boost to max level with like a bunch of the gear. Like you wouldn't get paragons, but I think it was like level 50 or 60. They'd basically give you an entire character with all the legendaries like instantly. I'm just like, what is this? Like, this is something that you'd see in some sort of free to play game. It's like, oh, spend $10, get max level gear, go now. And I'm just like, why would you just let someone go to max? Because when you do that, they're going to be completely confused because they didn't make the build and it's already done for you, which I get it. Their idea is the majority of the player base does not play the game for a long time and they just get confused and they leave. So they're like, we'll just give you everything. And I think that while that may help some players, I think for a lot of people, that makes it worse because you didn't make the build. You don't understand why that gear is equipped. So that's an area where I would say that it's going to be very difficult to tackle that. But the thing is that that's the genre of the game. You don't look at chess and and say, well, how come there's no autoplay in chess? How come there's no like tell me where to make the best move? I think that people go into action RPGs and RTS games kind of with the mindset that like this is a game that I got to invest time into and learn. But you can tell me how you feel about that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a fan of autoplay. I don't play mobile games. I feel like that's generally speaking where like that particular like gameplay design comes from because again, it's a time thing and people are playing who are playing mobile games are maybe in transit or on a lunch break or something like that. So they're not like sitting down at the computer ready to like smash out a game for a bit. But I do think you're absolutely right on a lot of things. I definitely want to like highlight sort of the initial like point that you made because I think it's pretty interesting. So when I asked you essentially what your thoughts on the feedback and the criticisms of like D4 bad, like you know the stigma that we sort of discussed in the initial question. You said that if you owned Blizzard, you would shift your focus to Diablo 5 instead of potentially working more on Diablo 4. And
Oh,
sort of
absolutely. Yeah.
what that meant to me was that you think that Diablo 4 is like too far gone to be able to get past that stigma now, so that Blizzard should look to the future to potentially like reinvigorate the Diablo franchise in a new way rather than trying to save a game that maybe has gone too far in one direction or something like that, which I think is super interesting. I don't know if I don't know if we'll see the trend with Diablo games is we get a new Diablo game every 10 years essentially. And so I don't think we'll be seeing Diablo 5 for a very long time. Another thing that I wanted to highlight to you was the expansions, the thing that you brought up about Diablo games and how basically every single expansion. I love how you mentioned Hellfire, by the way. I totally forgot that even existed, but that like reinvigorated like a long lost memory. Every single Diablo expansion that came out, Diablo 2 Lord of Destruction is like it was a game changer, right? Like it added so much stuff to the game. And same with like Reaper of Souls with Diablo 3. Like they really did improve the game on like fundamental levels while adding new content to the game as well. And I played Vessel of Hatred. I refunded Vessel of Hatred after I bought it because I was so upset with the narrative of the campaign. I am one of those like narrative Andes when it comes to ARPGs, specifically with Diablo, because the story of Diablo 2 was one of my favorite like narratives in like any basic game that I played. I love the story. Didn't love the story in Diablo 3. Loved the story in Diablo 4 though. I thought that the story of Diablo 4 throughout the campaign was really one of its like strongest points. Like I had a blast playing through it, but I didn't love how they like teased me with Mephisto because obviously with Mephisto, cool dude from Diablo 3 who you fight a bunch of times to get good items. I was really looking forward to fighting him. And so when I didn't get to fight him, spoiler guys if you haven't played Vessel of Hatred, I was so mad, bro. I was like, "What is this? I just paid like $50 for like a class, a new zone, and like the most lackluster story of all time, basically, in any Diablo franchise expansion." And so I really hope, in summary, that Blizzard can sort of rebound with their next expansion. Basically, like I don't love the fact that these, pinnacle. I'm going to call them pinnacle bosses, even though they're not. But these formative bosses that are part of like the Diablo lore, almost as a selling point for the game, are paywall. Like it sucks to feel like I have to buy another expansion to even see Mephisto, or two more expansions to even see Diablo. Like I don't know, it just kind of feels weird, you know what I mean?
Oh, okay. So touching upon that point, interestingly enough, Diablo, just like a lot of video games, they heavily rely on nostalgia, and a lot of people got sold on that nostalgia. Like Mephisto's coming back, and
Mhm.
for me, if I worked at Blizzard, I don't know why they made it so you didn't even get to fight one sort of big pinnacle boss. Because let's be honest, we all know that the Butcher's probably coming back, the Skeleton King will come back, Diablo will come back eventually. Let us kill him. If you want to make another form of him later down the line, cool. But I think for players to have like that big closure of like I took down something that I saw that was in like the game and it was kind of teased. And I think Lilith was okay. I think for the very first game, like without the expansion, it felt like it was enough. That was kind of like the star boss. You got to fight her. That was okay. We didn't need to have Diablo in that one necessarily, and that it didn't receive that much criticism that there wasn't Diablo then. But as far as there being an expansion that didn't have a good big pinnacle boss, I think perhaps maybe they actually had to cut it. I think a lot of games are actually pretty well designed, but then what happens is the publisher is like, okay, well, let's cut up this and let's remove this to the next expansion. And the developers are like, no, 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 we need this. And the publishers are like, no, we need more expansions. Separate it. And I think unfortunately nowadays with gaming in general, because you have to have an investor, you have to have so many different marketing teams and so many different things that require revenue. This is sadly how games are, because most game developers are actually good and they want the game to be really good. And a lot of times the publisher is like, no, the game needs to come out right now. We need this much content, and we also need like what do you have planned for the next 6 months? And like, wait, hold on. We just want to put everything now. And I think that maybe that's the case. Maybe they had originally Mephisto planned. It could have been a thing. But I think that they definitely needed some sort of big closure. Like it would have been cool to even if they brought back another very iconic boss, that was kind of a big surprise that would have the same impact, right? Like to have at least somewhat of impact, maybe Asmodan, maybe Diablo. They didn't necessarily have to have Mephisto, but there needed to be a boss that felt iconic. And I feel like the iconic bosses were kind of in the previous Diablo games. Like when we look at like most iconic bosses, we would think of like the Butcher or Diablo or even maybe Bale. But a lot of the Diablo 4 bosses don't stick around, at least to me personally, as much as the previous games. It could be the voice lines. It just could be the game in general, because the way that the game handles, you just walk up and you just one shot the boss and go next. Like that's kind of how Diablo is if you're a good player. And maybe in the future things will change, but again, that's why I'm thinking if they want the game to slow down and make these bosses really epic and powerful, because if you fight the newest boss, he's just a big bullet sponge until you get your damage high enough. The new Astaroth that came back into the game. So I would say the mechanic definitely exists. Like you have to like stand in a circle. There's a giant circle that goes on the ground, and then while he's reviving, there's like fire, and you have to like weave in between it. It's kind of like I guess like the serious fight to an extent, but it's still relatively weak. And I think if Diablo wants to go back to a different game pace, they have to focus on Diablo 5. But I think in general, having expansions to me would be much better than just like these seasonal updates that are too small to me. I think if we had a new season come out with a new class, that would keep people interested in. And I think that they would need more revenue to actually make a new class every single season. So I don't know if people would be okay with spending 5 or $10, or maybe if you buy the battle pass, it includes the new class. Because if there was a new class every single season, I think this game's life cycle would go up tremendously. But it is a lot of work, I get it. Um, in terms of adding a new class to have all these skills and stuff. But I mean, there's so many mobile games that pump these things out. And if we already have the base of the game, and I think there's going to be a point where AI is so good that people just make the best games. I think that the best games in the next couple years will be made by people that are just really passionate people that just really know how to use AI and have a vision for the game. Whereas Diablo 4, the current vision doesn't seem very clear. Like, we have a lot of these campfire chats that are super contradictory to what they're saying. Like, there was one point, and I like the Diablo team. I'm trying not to grill them on this, but Colin specifically said, "We do not want you chain farming bosses, but when you make the boss drop an item that you need that is 1%, which is the mythics, what else are you supposed to do to get these mythics? Am I supposed to go just play in the pit and hope a mythic randomly comes out? Because realistically, that's not possible." And then he also mentioned that they didn't want the game to have like crazy high numbers. But then you make the game have the monsters have so much HP to just get my glyph to be the max level. The bosses have trillions and trillions of HP. So it's like, well, if I don't do that number, I can't do the content. So if you want these numbers to be more realistic and not hitting for billions, trillions, quadrillions, why do you make a monster have that much HP? That's like, it's super contradictory. And I think what may be happening with Diablo 4 is that the game is getting passed to too many people, and you need one person to have like a good vision. And I want to say the original person that was like one of the head guys was David Kim. He was in charge of StarCraft. He actually had so many cool ideas. He had the rune word system that we got back in the, was it like 2020? He had the rune system. He had set items planned. He had so many other things planned, and then he got kicked from the team. I was just like really disappointed because when I hear someone that's working on StarCraft is working on Diablo, I'm like, okay, this is cool because I love StarCraft. But I think what's happening is perhaps the game is getting passed down to too many people. There was also a gameplay showcase, and this is a huge point of criticism for Diablo. Uh, and the reason why I want Diablo 4 to kind of go away and we just make Diablo 5 is because
Mhm.
I don't know, did you ever see the gameplay of it was like two people that were the dungeon designers of the game had no
Yes, I
idea how to
watched
actually play it.
this.
Yeah, I
Yes.
know they removed comments and
Wasn't it
while
like pre-recorded footage and they weren't even playing the game? They were just talking and like moving their hands. Like I thought that was, or is that a tinfoil hat conspiracy theory? I thought that was like the intel going around.
at the end of the day, for me, it was mostly that like they had no idea what they were doing, and it was very
Hmm.
evident. And
Hmm.
while I want to say that an artist may not need to know how to play the game, but if you're the dungeon designer, you should be able to play the game at a very decent level. Like you should just honestly, what I really want the Diablo 4 team to do is take all the Diablo partners and be like, hey, we want to work on Diablo 5 or the next expansion. What are your ideas? Let's build it. Versus what's currently going on, the current team, I feel like just doesn't understand action RPGs at the level that the players want. But in terms of dungeon design, this was something that they have improved upon. But like a lot of times, you'd have to go way over here, grab an item, go way over here, insert it, then grab another item, and then come back. Like it was just poorly designed. If it's the campaign and like this item that you're picking up is like really important and it's for the story, and because you're backtracking during the backtracking, if they have some sort of narrative, I think that that can flow much better and that can make sense why you're walking back and there's nothing to kill because they want you to hear the story. There's an NPC that talks, that's fine. But when you're doing these endgame maps, and now since Nightmare Dungeons are the new form of endgame content, when you have to like backtrack, it just feels bad. It's like you play a game for fun, not to have like this feeling of, oh, I just got to do this. And now with Diablo 4, there's a lot of, oh, I have to do this when it comes down to, all right, now I got to go get all 5 glyphs to 70 or 80 for my build, and it's just like, oh, I got to do this. And like, there's no like big ding drop like again like Path of Exile. So that's why I want to say that there's just too many things that I think are problematic with D4. If I was in charge to continue going with the game,
Hmm.
I would say Diablo 5 is the best solution to make a completely different team too. The artist though, I would say if I was to like be able to work on Diablo 5, we can take the D4 artists, we can keep them, but most of the other stuff, I would say it needs to be changed, not just because like I'm not a fan of a lot of the systems. Like when you have like Fireball, you choose crit or like burn. It's like you basically get one option, even though the skill tree extends one, and then you have to take that one node, and then there's two nodes to take after that, which is basically two options. I think I would want it to feel way more refreshing, and for that reason, I would want a brand new team, except for the artist. The artist, that's cool, but we could go with a different art style as long as it doesn't go into. I think Diablo 3's art style was kind of criticized, whereas Diablo 2 and Path of Exile 2, they have like a more dark, grittier tone. But I think that we can maybe change up the art style a little bit, but still think I want that realistic look. I don't really want the like I don't know, cell shaded, not necessarily anime, but I don't know what they're called, like different vibe that Diablo 3 definitely had. But to give Diablo 3 some credit, visual clarity is pretty rough in D4, whereas Diablo 3 with its vibrant colors was actually kind of nice because you could visually see when something died, it was going to explode. But yeah, I think Diablo 5 is the area that I would look towards in terms of the future of the game. But
Fair enough.
hopefully,
Wow. Yeah, like you
hopefully we
that was
can
a
get.
I don't know. I feel like you kind of answered that question perfectly because I think in summary, it's like, um, you know, there's clearly not going to be a Diablo 5 for a really long time. But if it did come out, I think there would be obviously a lot of sales because as you mentioned in your answer, like Diablo as a franchise is fueled by nostalgia. We talked about how, our enjoyment as gamers started with playing like Diablo and Diablo 2. Like there's always going to be a special place in our heart for these types of games. And Blizzard Entertainment knows this, and they know the power of the selling power behind that nostalgia. And that was applicable to Vessel of Hatred, that was applicable to Diablo 4 in general, that was applicable to Diablo 3. And as you mentioned, there were these bosses that they brought back, Andariel, Duriel, some of these like, formative, like not like fully prime evils, but like, lesser evil bosses that were cool to see in Diablo 4. Like when I got to see Andariel, when I got to see Duriel, I was like, yo, this is sick. Like I used to love killing these guys in the campaign in Diablo 2. But you know what? It's interesting, like, to see, how the game progressed. And I think it's very much so, like what you said. The game was passed on too many times, and every time it got passed on, the vision became less clear. And if you look at any game that was formative, like Diablo 2 is a prime example, you had David Brevik and the Schaefer brothers, who were like the top, and that was like, very much so the vision that they had for the game. And then they stuck through it and they made the game, and that was the result of that. Same thing with Path of Exile with Jonathan Rogers and Chris Wilson. They had like the vision for the game, and that's what they made. And so when the game gets passed on too many times, it results in these changes to the vision that have basically like muddled like what Diablo 4 could have been. And so I think you're absolutely right. Like Diablo 5 could just be like a fresh start for them. Um, Sadly, I don't think we'll see that, but I would love to sort of take what we said and segue that into sort of more of a Path of Exile stuff, because as much as I'm enjoying this chat about Diablo, clearly I'm a huge Diablo fanboy. I've always want the best for that series, and I really hope that Diablo 4 can make a comeback. I would also love to sort of segue over to some Path of Exile 2 stuff. So the first question that I want to start with about Path of Exile 2 was essentially, give me your first like introductory experience. Explain that to me. Were you excited for the game after being, a fan of the original Path of Exile? Were you skeptical of it? How did you sort of feel about the game, and how would you describe your first experience with Path of Exile 2?
Okay, so I was really excited when they were to announce Path of Exile 1 and 2 would still get content. Overall, I'll be honest, I think Path of Exile 1 is still a superior game overall with all of the systems. And I want to say that while Path of Exile 2 is a newer game, I always want to say a game should always improve on what does work. Like we have like these essences, and like now it's like, oh, you can only use essences on certain rarity. You can't just get a yellow and kind of spam it like a chaos orb, if you will, in Path of Exile 1 normally. But with PoE 2, it's kind of like you pick up random items and you just slam them. And I actually kind of like that, but I also want other forms of more deterministic crafting. So having like all of these things removed where you learn like what prefixes and suffixes can roll on an item, what's like the weights, and then you don't really have too much control. Like what I like to do, I think the easiest way to teach people to craft, because I do make guides on Path of Exile, and like to tell someone to get something and then spend multiple divine orbs for with like prefixes or suffixes, that's very expensive. And then like they hit something they don't want, and then it's like, oh, you got to reset it, and they're just like, no, 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 I just farmed up for a week for that, I can't just do that. That's pretty painful. So I always think that the easier way for people to kind of learn crafting is to take a item that has a good fracture on it, which so like you already have like one good stat, right? And then you go ahead and throw an essence on it, and that gives you another good stat that you want. And then from there, you can kind of build your character as far as crafting goes. But I like the depth that Path of Exile offers in general compared to Diablo. Diablo, we really don't have crafting. It's like you have one mod, you reroll it, that's it. That's crafting. But with Path of Exile, we have so many different ways to craft. And then Path of Exile 2 is like, okay, you get an item. There's no like alt spam to get that one specific stat that you want for like hundreds of tries, which is painful too. But then you have so many other systems that weren't implemented in. And I think that that is a big area that could use improvement for Path of Exile 2, specifically the crafting. But overall, I do like Path of Exile 2. I will admit, though, I really don't like going through the campaign 2 times. But obviously, once we get the rest of the acts, it'll probably be much easier. Because one thing I will give credit for the Diablo team is like we don't have to redo the entirety of the like campaign. Because after I do it, I'll be honest, I don't really want to do the campaign like 2 or 3 times. If I want to make multiple classes when there's a new league, I don't really like doing the campaign. But I still love Path of Exile 2. I think the game plays really good, especially if you're evasion based, because some of the like armor mods that you can get on a map, like where it's like the monster just removes your armor, it's like way, 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 way out of control. Whereas like with evasion based builds, it's not as punishing. So I want to say, as long as you're not playing melee, I like Path of Exile 2 a lot more. I feel like Melee has been in this really bad spot in general for action RPGs. It's not even a Path of Exile thing. It's just that Melee in general has different phases on a boss where like they'll do something and there's AoE on the ground and like you can't attack the boss because either he's in the AoE or you're in a spot where you can't attack. So as long as you're playing like a ranged build, I think Path of Exile 2 is a lot more enjoyable, especially with clear speed. I know there's certain skills that are pretty strong if you are playing melee. But I'm talking about from the viewpoint of like a new player's experience. Melee is just rough in general. But as far as PoE2 goes, I mean, Lightning Spear is so great. But I think they've been trying to retake control over the game as well. Like when I did all of like the different forms of Arbiter, because you get one of the like passives on your Atlas, I still actually don't know how to fight Arbiter, sadly, because I beat him on the hardest difficulty, but I just had so much DPS that I didn't even learn the mechanic. And at that point, I felt like I was playing Diablo. I was like, oh, just get my DPS so high, one shot the boss. Who cares about the mechanic? And I want to say that while that's enjoyable, I think that Path of Exile wants to not go that route. I think their idea is like, no, this boss is going to be challenging. You got to learn it. So I respect them for that in the sense. But a lot of people actually do want that in their action RPG, uh, oddly enough. Now, I'll be on the side of I think the first time that you fight a boss, it should feel epic. It should be hard. You should learn the mechanics because that's part of what makes the game fun. If I just walk up and one shot this giant boss and I have no idea how it works, did I really get to experience the boss fight? I would say no.
It's so
So
funny that you mentioned that. Like Jonathan Rogers had talked about that particular aspect of the game in an interview. I'm not sure which interview it was. It might have been like the Tavern Talk with Darth Microtransaction and Gazzy, where he was crushed that people were just not engaging with the pinnacle bosses and their mechanics, because like the team has been working on these mechanics for months to make them really cool and really engaging, and players are just going in and one-shotting them because Arbiter of Ash has these one-shot mechanics that can kill you. And back in upon early access release, the pinnacle boss attempts didn't have like multiple portals, so it was like you go in, you farm all these like fragments to do Arbiter of Ash. They're very expensive if you want to buy them on the currency exchange, and then you don't know the fight, so you're going to die to one of these one-shot mechanics. And so the safest way to engage with these bosses was essentially to just have so much DPS that you just insta-killed them before they could phase or do whatever. So I definitely agree. I definitely think that there needs to be some sort of way. I think that it's much better now because essentially, with the various tiers, tier 1 through 4 of pinnacle bosses, now if you start on tier 1, you get portals, and then the portals decrease over time. So you're actually encouraged to attempt these pinnacle bosses at a much lower power level, which is a fantastic change. I mean, like having having no like more attempts was very, very bad, but I'm glad they fixed that. So yeah, I know what you mean. I think that through the campaign, especially when you're playing through the first time and you're actually struggling with the bosses and learning their mechanics, is some of the best like experience that you can have. And I think that that's something like really strong that PoE 2 has going on for it, is the difficulty. I'm a difficulty enjoyer. I only play on like hardcore or solo self-found. So basically like the hardest way that you can play the game. But I'll go back to what you said about basically like playing through the campaign a second time. This has been a big point of contention that I've seen within my community. People don't like having to play through the campaign in PoE2 again. I personally enjoy it because I think that the campaign has really engaging boss mechanics. So despite having played through the game 50 plus times already, like it's still fun because I know how to do it quickly and I enjoy the moment to moment throughout the campaign. But do you ever think that like Path of Exile will like introduce like a campaign skip, or are they're too focused on sort of like the feeling of Diablo 2, where you had to commit to playing through the campaign as if you wanted to make another character? What do you think their approach could be on that?
Well, a lot of things that get introduced in action RPGs can be early game content, and they want to see how like the progression feels with the skill, leveling it up, and even uniques that you can get while leveling. But I think that after you've already played the game so many times and so many seasons, it becomes kind of fatiguing, especially in PoE2's current state where you only have so many acts. I think when we get the other acts, it may smooth the transition for a lot of players because, again, going through it the same acts, especially if you're trying to do it in one day too, because most people that play PoE, I want to say it's not like Diablo where people will hop in for 10, 20 minutes. People that play PoE are like, I'm dedicating like this weekend as PoE time. So
Yeah.
when people can invest that time and you just finish the acts and you're like, I got to do it all over again, that's the pain point that I want to say
Hmm.
that again, it will definitely be smoothed out once we get the rest of the acts. But I think that it would be awesome to have an option. I don't know why they haven't at least tried an option. I mean, it could be just like it's not like instantly you're just going to go to the highest tier maps. You'd start off with like I don't know. They'll call it like some sort of other form of maps. They'll call it like, I don't know, early maps or progression maps, tier one. Then you go through like, 10, 20 tiers or whatever. And then you get to the end game. And that way for the players that have already experienced the campaign. So if I was in their position, I think one solution would be to offer the players, if they want to do the campaign, they can do that. But there's also another form of content. So that way you kind of satisfy both players. And if people enjoy the campaign, then let them play it. And if people want to do the other thing, hey, go for it. I mean, actually, in season 8 of Diablo, you actually had a pretty good chance if you just played the campaign to be relatively fast too. It wasn't like, oh, if you do the campaign, it's like 10 times slower. It was relatively fast because they slowed the progression in other areas. So I want to say that having the option is always what I think is the best idea for
Mm.
your player base to let them decide what they actually enjoy.
I love that. I love that. I initially I was actually opposed to this because I think it's just because I'm so Diablo 2 brained where I'm like, play through the campaign, I enjoy the campaign, and that's part of making a new character. But coming from like a time standpoint, I don't necessarily disagree with it anymore. Like I would imagine that, you've played through the game the first time, you've earned basically the right to get to maps. If you have a character to start off at level 65 in your hideout, I would think that it'd be fine if he was just naked because you could basically find all of the gear for your new character on your main character, whatever like that. And so you're like stockpiling stuff, and then you just equip your character with stuff that you've basically found, and then it kind of eases the transition from making new characters that people can try new builds out that they haven't tried before. Because you're right, it is a time commitment. Like I just went through Path of Exile 1 for the first time. I'd never played the game before. I only played PoE 2, and I've been playing PoE 2 a ton. I'm a PoE 2 Andy. I still prefer PoE 2 over PoE 1. But I wanted to sort of talk to you about the differences between the two games because playing PoE 1 for the first time opened my eyes up to design decisions that went into making Path of Exile 2 versus the stuff that's happening in Path of Exile 1. And it opened my eyes to the good of Path of Exile 1 and the bad, and the same thing with Path of Exile 2 as well. Like, for instance, like Path of Exile 1, being a new player, and I went in blind with no build guides and no tutorials, it felt very overwhelming, obviously. And that's something that people would essentially, if I was gonna listen to any advice, I'm sure a ton of people would be like, Blaze, like you need to follow a build guide. You need to like know about all of these things. But I really wanted to experience like what a brand new player going into the game blind, what's the vibe of the game? Like how does it feel to experience an interface with it? Um, and it was just like there was just so much stuff going on, and I found it hard to know what to do or what not to do or how to figure out how to utilize the various like League of Mechanics to craft items and stuff like that. So PoE 2 is very much so what I believe is very much so developed to get new players into this game. Like it's not necessarily developed for Path of Exile 1 players, which is weird to say because it's the sequel to Path of Exile 1, but there's so many design decisions that went into it that it made it feel like it's not necessarily appealing to the same audience. You can blame early access and the lack of content for that, but I'm just wondering from your perspective, like, what are the good things and bad things about Path of Exile 1? You mentioned crafting as being something that's really positive in Path of Exile 1. And what are some of the good things and bad things like about PoE 2, aside from, the lack of like crafting and stuff like that?
So I would say that I actually like the PoE 1 campaign a lot more than PoE 2 because the reason why is you can go way faster, but it's
Hmm.
also because I've been playing a lot more PoE 1. Like over the course of time, everyone's just going to improve and they're going to be able to get faster and faster. But as far as PoE 2 goes, I wouldn't really say that there's anything that's super like bad with the game because they want the game to kind of be more grounded. I still think that having mobility skills is kind of nice, especially during the campaign, but they want us to use the new mechanic of the dodge roll. So there's reasons why. It's not like we're removing the whole movement ability because we just want you to have a slower experience. Their idea and vision, at least, is that they want us to be able to use that dodge mechanic. Because if you were able to just use some mobility skill every single like half second, then you wouldn't be using their dodge because then you could just move super far away and then it would change up the pacing of the game for sure. They want a
Hmm.
more slow experience. And the first 1 hour of Path of Exile 2 feels very, very different than it does, at least now. Like I'm talking about when the game first launched, if anyone remembers their first experience, it was really rough. The first 1 hour of the game is super difficult. But as you get stronger, you actually feel a lot stronger in that game as you progress. Than I
Hmm.
would say in other action RPGs. Like with a lot of the other ones, whether you played like Torchlight or even like the most recent Diablo season, you start off really, really strong. You're basically deleting most of the content really fast. And the sense of progression in Path of Exile 2 is really well done in the sense where, like, in the very beginning, most builds, especially if you fight the first boss, the Hillock, it's really challenging. You have to dodge, otherwise you're just getting one-shotted. And so there is kind of that sense of like trial by fire with Path of Exile that I do kind of like because it's like, oh, you died to it, especially during the campaign. Because it's like if you're dying to Arbiter and you only have one portal back when it used to be like that, that is too rough, and I think that that's very mean to the player. But with the campaign, there was definitely some frustrating bosses. Like the first Act 1 boss, the first time anyone fights them, I want to say that it is a super challenging fight. Most people died to it multiple times, and I think that that's
Yes.
fine. And like there's a point where like I was like, okay, I have to go back, re-level up. And then when I defeated him, it felt like there was a sense of accomplishment. Where with other action RPGs that are too easy, you don't feel that sense of accomplishment. So I want to say that that's something that Path of Exile 2 does better than Path of Exile 1. Um, but I like, again, both of the games. They kind of end up being similar towards the end. But I want to say the survivability in Path of Exile 2, if you're playing Evade, is like really, really good in terms of quality of life versus PoE 2. And I'm hoping that it stays that way because in PoE 1, even with a high evasion based build, there's just so many monsters sometimes on screen. Just like in PoE 2, if you play like if you spec into Breach, like there's just too many monsters and you just get hit stunned to death. That feels very bad and it feels like you're out of control. Like it's like out of your control to basically be able to survive when there's too many monsters that jump on you. And that's kind of going back to like even Diablo 1's design, where you had to have faster hit recovery, otherwise your character's dead. It kind of comes down to like stun threshold or if you're frozen in PoE 2. But with PoE 2's most recent update, I found the addition of having the extra charm slots to make the game so easy to where I don't really have to pay attention to the screen as much. And I kind of like tune out and kind of play it like I do in Diablo, where I can just like read my chat the whole time when I'm streaming because I don't really have to dodge too much. I don't know if you've ever played with triple charms with I think it's called Fortify or Barrier. Um is it called Fortify? It's
Fortify
the
and
new
PoE 2.
charm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is it is but it gives you like do you know what Iron Skin is? Or
Yeah.
Steel
Yeah.
Skin
Yeah.
is from PoE 1? It
Yeah.
basically gives you damage that it can take. I forgot what it's called. Okay, I
Mhm.
think it's called is it called Guard?
It's called guard. Yes. Sorry. Yeah. Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
that what
It's like damage
you
that
can
you
get?
can absorb before actually affecting your like effective HP, basically.
So yeah, so if you take, there's a node that you can take that converts any percent of physical to elemental as a random element. It's pretty early on the tree. And then you equip one lightning, or I think they call it like topaz, sapphire, maybe ruby. But if you take one of each charm that can apply, you have everything pretty much covered except for chaos damage, and the game
And it's
becomes really
procking
easy.
and giving you guard basically every time you take damage. That's pretty
Yeah,
cool.
it's
Yeah.
Yeah, and so if you can get that, and I think you get like charm recovery or something like that on belts. But if you take that, the game actually, with this most recent update, which was Dawn of the Hunt, that made the game so much easier. And I actually like that because like I built into it though. I had to get those
Hmm.
charms. I had to um craft. Well, I think I actually just purchased them with currency, but I think that you can use currency on. I think they can only come to blue on the charms, but basically you get those three charms. You have cold, fire, lightning, and then you take physical as a random element, and then every single time you get attacked, you get like 500 um, like barrier or like a guard or whatever they call it. And it made the game so much easier. So with that addition, because before belts kind of sucked in PoE2 before they can roll with like good stats. I forgot what it was when they first came out, but the belts were terrible in PoE 2. But with that addition, I think the whole game became way smoother, and I actually like the game state right now. Like the drop rates are pretty decent in PoE 2. I know when Dawn of the Hunt first came out, everyone was complaining. The game had a mostly negative review. Where actually, if we look at it, I'm going to pop up Steam real quick. I'm actually curious to see what Path of Exile 2 is at. Is it still at mixed or is it? So right now it's at wow. I'm actually genuinely surprised. Path of Exile 2 is at 52%. Whereas if we go to PoE 1, I'm curious to see what Path of Exile 1 looks like. Because I genuinely think Path of Exile 1 has a higher score. That's interesting. I'm actually genuinely surprised that Path of Exile 1 and 2 are both sitting at mixed.
Oh wow, I
One's
didn't
at
realize Path of Exile 1 was at mixed as well. That's crazy. What?
I felt
Like recent though,
genuinely.
not overall, right?
Yeah, recent. Path
Yeah,
of
yeah.
Exile 2 is sitting at 52%, which I can understand because of the backlash when the league first came out. And
Hmm.
a lot of times when you make someone upset, they are more inclined to give you a down vote or say like, "Oh, this is bad" or whatever.
Yeah.
And they're not really going to change the review. Even if it does get better, they just whatever, I have better things to do. It's like if you see negative reviews on a food like review site, generally people don't say, "Wow, that place was great. I'm gonna write a good review." It's like, "Wow, this is terrible. I'm gonna write a review." So I'm surprised that Path of Exile 1 has again 60% right now, which is sitting at mixed. I think Path of Exile 1 is a fantastic game, and this was one of the most fun leagues that I've had in PoE 1 because the currency is great and it's flowing. And then on top of that, I like the league mechanic. It's rewarding. Now, let's be real. Did you play Mercenaries League, by the way?
I did, yeah. So Mercenaries League was the first ever league that I played in Path of Exile 1. Like, and it was cool. Like I loved Mercenaries in Diablo 2, as mentioned. Like Mercenaries in Diablo 2 was the first time I've ever seen a mercenary like in any ARPG. And they were goaded. Like you could equip them with like crazy rune words that could completely change monster resistances or change your mana. Basically to have infinite mana with like insight and stuff like that. So yeah, it was cool to see that sort of like honored in Path of Exile, and I chose like an interesting league to hop in for the first time. They were also like
Yeah,
kind of overtuned though. I was getting one shot like crazy sometimes.
yeah. So that's why I was thinking that like maybe it's sitting at mixed because straight up I played the game so many times. I can beat the entire game without dying once, but then I go in literally act 1 and I'm dying to like some sort of league mechanic that like he's like level 1 and he's like or like level 3 and he's doing so much damage. I'm just like how is the experience for a new player, especially because right now we haven't had a new league in a while. And because I play Diablo, I'm always getting newer players interested in Path of Exile when I start streaming it because it's like, okay, well,
Mhm.
there's a new league, let's play it. And so I'll make like a guide and I'm like, what the heck is this? Like, the content creator, and this happened with all the content creators too. They're like, wow, dude, content creator can't even do act 1. And it's like they'll laugh at you, but at the same time, it's a thing where Path of Exile genuinely does this every single league where like they come out with the league mechanic, it is too hard, and they're like, okay, guys, we're gonna readjust it. And you could test that within the first day. Like, I don't know why a lot of games don't get the testing that they need. I don't know who's being hired for these tests. Like it goes the same thing with Diablo. It's not just a Path of Exile thing. I don't know who's testing these things because it genuinely feels untested. Like you could go within the very first act and die instantly. You could get the best player in the game and they would just die instantly for the mechanic. And that's a very bad experience for a newer player to kind of like progress in the game and you click on this thing and it just instantly kills you and you're just like, I didn't have time. Like it feels very bad, and I think that that's what causes players to leave Path of Exile 1 and 2 when it like a lot of people like they find Hillock to be too hard and they can't kill it. And like for me, I like that challenge, but Hillock at least you didn't dodge it, right? That's kind of your fault in like the first, hour of playing that game. But if you go PoE 1 and you died in the mercenary, it feels like there wasn't any counterplay to it. As in the guy just one-shots you. With Hillock, you see him charge up. There's a sound. It's a little bit more fair. But yeah, this was a really good league for PoE, with the exception of like the dying part. And I already knew that they were going to adjust it, but it still feels relatively overtuned, I would say, like in terms of how hard some of these guys are. But they also have high rewards. And what's interesting is it's not like the one that has like the divine orb that will drop will be way harder. Sometimes like there's one that has like 1 or 2 chaos orbs, and I'm like, yeah, I got this. Is like, and he just one shots you, and you're just like, oh, okay.
Yeah. I mean, I'm glad I never played hardcore for my first time. I mean, I never would play hardcore as my first time going into PoE 1 blind. That just seems absolutely ridiculous. But it seems like that particular mechanic has affected quite significantly the hardcore player base as well, because they're not able to like interact with this new league mechanic because it's just too rippy. You know what I mean? Like it's just like it's not worth it, especially as you said, because the rewards oftentimes are like 2 chaos or like whatever, and it's like I'm not losing my character for like this amount of reward. But on the flip side, it's super cool to see sort of another layer that they've added in terms of like build making. Like it's cool to have a second set of skills and gear and stuff like that we are so familiar with from Path of Exile, or sorry, from Diablo 2, that's being integrated into Path of Exile in a really like interesting way. From a balance standpoint though, dude, like I can't imagine how to balance like having these like NPCs with all of these different items, with all of the skills in the game. Like it probably took some significant like brain power to figure out like what the best way to balance that was. And clearly like it still needs to be like fixed a bit more. I know they nerfed like mercenaries within the first like few days of the game, or of Secrets of the Atlas being out, but yeah, it very much still feels like there still needs some tuning, bro. Oh
Yeah, they
man.
do
Yeah.
way too much damage in terms of to the player. I actually like that they
Yeah.
do a lot of damage to the monsters because that way, when you get them, they don't feel useless. Because again, with Diablo, it's like they're okay during the campaign, then you get to the end game and they do nothing, unless you're talking about Diablo 2, which they did an excellent job of. But I would say that this league overall is pretty good. And if you compare it to PoE 2 in the current state, I honestly would say both the games are very enjoyable from an action RPG standpoint. I know it's mixed right now, but if we look at like another game that's mixed, like Wolcen, the reason why that game had a lot of criticism was because the game was actually broken. Like a lot of people actually did enjoy the game as far as like the campaign goes, which is in the earlier state where just again it had that negative stigma to it, where it's like, oh, the game's always going to be broken, and they kept on releasing patches to try to fix the game. But I think when people have the mindset of like a game's broken, or like you mentioned before, like D4 bad, I think with Path of Exile's current state, to see both of their games mix is absolutely wild because they're usually both in like very positive. Like PoE,
It really came from two significant issues. So PoE 1 had really, really bad server issues, especially for EU. And so people weren't able to actually enjoy the game. And, when players, it's like what you said, when players are not happy, they're jumping on Steam to leave a bad review. And I think players expect more from PoE 1 because they've had so many like years of like content updates and expansions and leagues. So like I think a lot of players, I'm not trying to speak for the player base, but I think from what I understand, a lot of the player base was like, guys, like GGG, get your shit together. This has been like a 10-year issue where like EU players can't log in or like are getting disconnected constantly, on top of dying to mercenaries like in one shot. So I think that, regardless of like the Secrets of the Atlas expansion being like really, really good, those issues like overrode the like, it's like when you go to a restaurant or like anything, it's like if you have a bad experience, you're likely to tell 10 people about that bad experience. But if you have a really good experience, you're likely to tell one person maybe about that really good experience, right? And I think that like that is reflected in sort of the um, reviews on Path of Exile 1 and Path of Exile 2. The mixed standpoint right now, I believe, just comes from the incredibly negative reception from Dawn of the Hunt. Even though, like, I don't know if you've jumped in recently, but like Dawn of the Hunt is completely changed now. It's like it's done a complete 180 to the point where it's like really really good. Like the state of the game is, I would say, like the best it's been, but the reviews don't showcase that because people have logged out and they're not coming back until point 3. So I think that sort of sums up where we're at in terms of those mixed reviews. I didn't realize it was that bad for PoE 1. I know PoE 2, like, yeah, like the player base was not happy with Dawn of the Hunt, but I didn't realize that the server issues were so bad that people were like review bombing PoE 1 as well.
Yeah, I think that in general with games, I expect day one to always be bad, like in terms of
Mhm.
like server stability. Like I've come to just kind of accept that as games, and it sucks, but that's the reality of online games. And sometimes it's genuinely not even the people that like. It's what I'm saying is it might not even be let's say Grinding Gear Games. I don't know if they host servers. Sometimes in the earlier stages, they'll rent servers because they need extra space for those additional players. But on top of that, sometimes they don't want to invest too much in a bunch of servers because the first week is super hot for a game. And then if you're going to lose, let's say like 80% of your player base, which happens very commonly with especially action RPGs. Diablo has this too, where like the first week you have, let's say, 10,000 players, and then the next week it's 2,000. Like you lose so many players within the very first week. It's like, well, I don't want to invest, in these server costs because it's
Mhm.
only going to be for like say 2 or 3 days where there's so many people where we would have to spend a lot of money. So sometimes it comes down to a money thing, perhaps that they're not getting enough servers and in enough areas also because then if one server is gone, right, then everyone moves to another server, then that server gets congested. So it could be some sort of monetary reason why a lot of games day one just don't have the server capacity. Maybe they just don't want to have enough on purpose because they're like, well, we're going to
Yeah.
lose it anyways.
Yeah. That would
And
be
it's probably not
interesting.
the developers.
Well, no, you're absolutely right. It's probably like the executives or like the board that's like, is it worth
Yeah.
investing this many thousands of dollars to basically have enough server to cover like the player base for the first week? It's but I think the value is exactly what we just talked about, which is the reviews. I mean, people look
Mhm.
to those reviews to make a decision on whether I should play this game and log in. And if the cost of investing in these servers for the first week is too much, maybe rethink that because you're losing a lot of potential player base by just having people review bomb your game or just not even log in because it's already mixed. So, yeah. But dude, I wanted to check in with you. I don't want to take up too much of your time tonight. We're already at like an hour 45 on this conversation. So how are you doing and how are you feeling?
Oh, I'm fine. I'm good. We can go in for a little bit more and talk about what other topics you had.
For sure. Yo, sounds good. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I really appreciate the conversation. I don't want to go too much longer, but we'll try and aim for like another 15 minutes. I have one
Okay.
question that I really want to ask you. um, and it's kind of unrelated, but on the topic of ARPGs. So I want to get Sladra's ARPG tier list. I don't know if you've ever made a video like this before, but maybe rank the
Okay.
big boys and give me sort of a breakdown of like what your ARPG tier list is in this very moment in time based on all the big heavy hitters
Okay.
that we have to play.
So the absolute must plays. Okay. I don't know if you're considering only isometric, but if we're not counting isometric, the top cream of the crop is going
Yes,
to
the
be for
S
me
tiers.
personally. The S tier is Path of Exile 1. It
Hmm.
is Diablo 2 with Lord of Destruction. And
Hmm.
then I also really like Dark Messiah of Might and Magic. Even though
Okay.
it's relatively light on the action RPG, those are the absolute like highly recommend. 99.9% of players will enjoy them, and the other percent, you're just wrong. But those are like the absolute like top tier. For other like smaller action RPGs, man. Uh, to be honest, I actually consider Diablo 1 to be pretty high up there, especially if you want to engage in mods. There's two mods that I can recommend. There's a Beelzebub mod, which gives it like 1080p, and it's pretty enjoyable. It's definitely going to be a little bit slower than any other action RPG, but going back and playing Diablo 1 is quite enjoyable on another mod called the Hell. So there's the Hell 1, 2, and 3, and these add like 20 classes into Diablo 1. And so there's so much more to experience in that. So those are other games that I could recommend to check out, specifically like Diablo 1. I actually think Diablo 3 is pretty good as far as like an entry action RPG. Like a lot of people ask me, do I recommend Diablo 4 to start out? And genuinely, Diablo 4 is becoming more and more like Diablo 3 as it goes along. And Diablo 3 is just a smoother gaming experience, and all the skills function properly. And what I mean by that is Diablo 4 is in this area where there's still a lot of bugs. And I think for the first time to play an action RPG, I think the best action RPG to start playing, if you've never played any action RPGs before, or if you want to, let's say, get a significant other or a little like sibling into the genre, I think Diablo 3 is the best action RPG. And even though I wouldn't consider it the best one, it's still a pretty decent action RPG to start playing because you get to learn, how the game mechanic works. It's pretty easy. You can feel very powerful once you get that like one item that gives you 300x. It gives that power fantasy that like you start off relatively slow and you get that one item, then the whole game becomes pretty easy. But again, that power fantasy lets you live it out really quick. And a lot of younger generation doesn't have the, I guess, patience to put in the time to get your character to be super powerful. Like, yeah, in Path of Exile, if you get Mage Blood, you're going to be super, super powerful. If you get like an Impulsa early on, like you can feel that power, and it takes a long time. To tell someone to spend 20 hours into a game before feeling powerful, they're probably just going to lose interest in the game. But if you allow the player to get powerful within, a couple hours, maybe like in like the first like hour, and you get one good item, I think that the player will be more inclined to continue like, wow, I got this one item. This is so cool. And then they want to try out other things. So I would say Diablo 3 is pretty ranked up pretty high. I would put it in like the A or B tier in terms of action RPGs. But I would need to like look at a list of
I know. I should have
I
prepared
don't
like
know
a
if you
board where you can drag them up and like I don't know how we would ever do that interactively, but okay. So we got S tier games being Diablo 2, Path of Exile, and Dark Messiah Might and Magic. I love how you keep bringing that game up because I used to play that back in the day too, and that game's a banger.
oh,
I
because
also agree.
yeah.
It's super underrated too. And it definitely was overshadowed by Elder Scrolls 100% because it's like first person stuff too. But yeah, okay. And then we got Diablo 3 as the best introductory ARPG. I actually really agree with this. Like it is like the perfect game. I loved playing like co-op, couch co-op on that game specifically with like a partner or a friend, and it is just like an easy game to get into. You don't need like a master's degree or a doctorate like you do to get into Path of Exile 1. Do you have any others that you could think of off the top of your head that you'd like to include in this list?
Yeah. So other games that I think are kind of like uh other things that you can look at. Some of these games don't have as much support, but I actually think the Torchlight series as like a light game series, it's like okay. Specifically, Torchlight 2 with mods is kind of cool. I think Last Epoch is kind of cool too. I think the area where Last Epoch falls short is the way that the game actually feels. The ideas that the game have, the
Yes.
bosses, like, is actually pretty well done. Like, if they can get the feel of the game to feel like that, I'm talking about the gameplay feel. Like, I'm not talking about the ideas. Like, the ideas are legitimately 10 out of 10. I love the ideas. I love how they have buffed the set items. There's a lot of cool things that you can do in the game. The crafting is easy to understand. Like, that game is genuinely like 10 out of 10 in a lot of different areas, but it's the actual core engine of the game that keeps it so far like it's like behind. Like if I was to put like a score on just the combat feel of the game, it is way below what I would consider average. So
Hmm.
that game is it's like it's the only thing really holding it back because there's so many cool ideas with Last Epoch. But I think that Last Epoch would probably be like in like the B tier. Like it's a really really good game. It has so many cool ideas, but the feel of the game just makes me not want to play the game again. Even though I had so much fun playing on the new league, when Dawn of the Hunt came out and that came out at the same time, I went to Last Epoch and I'm like, dude, there's actually loot here. Everything is really like smooth and stuff. So I liked Last Epoch a lot, but I don't know if I would consider Last Epoch like an S tier game. But it's definitely pretty high up there. Like that's another game that I could recommend.
Bro,
Another one,
if they did a Passover on the combat of Last Epoch, it would be like goaded. Like I totally agree with you. I've been supporting that game since before multiplayer was out, and it always felt super floaty. It didn't feel super good to like press the buttons and kill the monsters, which always threw me off. But everything else behind the curtain or behind the scenes is so good. So I really Yeah, I love that you brought that up.
But other cool games, like some of these games have like heavy pay to win, I'm not gonna lie. But there is definitely some cool stuff in some like the Korean games, like um, Undecember actually has a lot of really cool ideas. Torchlight Infinite has some cool ideas too, but unfortunately, Torchlight has this like little like pet system where you can like get more like unlocks with currency, which is like a gotcha system. And Torchlight Infinite is genuinely a pretty good game. It's just that it's held back because some people think it is pay to win. And while like objectively, yes, you can get advantage, you could still have a lot of fun, especially because that game's free too. Whereas like Wolcen, I don't know how that game is in the current state, but I would say that game, it's not a bad game in terms of campaign. It's just that it had a lot of bugs with it. Like I'm trying to look up other like action RPGs in the same genre over
There's a
here.
Grim Dawn that's always been super high up on people's list too. I've never really played it, so I don't know, but that one's something that maybe you could share some light on that game. I haven't tried it before.
Okay, so Grim Dawn and like Victor Vran, they're both like okay games. Like I wouldn't mind playing them, but I still think that um, as far as it goes, Grim Dawn is definitely pretty cool with mod. There's actually a mod where you can play the entirety of Diablo 2 in Grim Dawn. I think that these games are okay, but they never really held my interest.
Hmm.
But you know, you know what's actually a cool game? This one's way more casual because I was thinking about other games that were similar that were in like the Steam listing because I'm looking them up right now. Is Minecraft Dungeons is actually pretty fun. Like it's
Mm,
definitely like a
hmm.
crazy experience, but for like more of a casual player, it is good. But like there's actually really cool builds that you can do with Minecraft Dungeons. So that was a really cool game. I don't know if you're interested in the non-isometric games. Like there's other games like The First Descendant for action RPG that I actually liked that game a lot for like the first first experience going through the campaign. But also there's the Sloremancer is a pretty good one. Like that one I consider pretty high up there, but it's like it's a 15 buck game. It's not like uh it doesn't have like a crazy like cinematics or anything, but it's like pixel like. Even games like what is it, Hero Siege? Is it Dungeon Siege or Hero Siege? Is it
Hero
Hero Siege?
Siege, yes, that
Hero
game is
Siege is kinda
sick.
cool too. Yeah, there's a
Yeah.
lot of these little, like, cool games that are, like, easy, cool recommendations, but, like, it's nowhere near, like, Path of Exile 1 or Diablo 2, and those are really hard games to live up to as far
Mhm.
as, action RPGs go. But, okay, hold on. We
No, wait,
need to bust out a
before you
tier
look those up
list.
more, where would you place Path of Exile 2 on this tier list right now?
2, I actually like Path of Exile 2 a lot. I would say it's definitely below Path of Exile 1, like 100%. I
Mhm.
cannot give it
Yeah.
that. But in terms of like in the current game state, I would say it's like an easy 8 or 9 for me. I like the game a lot, but it's specifically the crafting that like is the only thing holding back because the original design was to have Path of Exile 1 and 2 as separate campaigns, and they would merge into PoE 1. That's why the kind of map system is similar. That was the original goal. Now, obviously, things have changed, and I actually am totally okay with it having these like different games. 'Cause now it's like, okay, I can pop on PoE 2 when they get a new league, and then I can also hop on
Yeah.
PoE 1. But I still enjoy PoE 1 more because it lets you go way faster. Like the the fact that they nerfed what is it, Temporalis, the chest armor that lets you go crazy. I'm kind of disappointed. I like those crazy items that just like let the
Mhm.
player just have like that crazy experience. But Path of Exile 1 will always be superior because Path of Exile 2, at least to me, because this is subjective, Path of Exile 2 wants a more grounded feel for the game, and I think that's great for the campaign. But in terms of the
Oh, I think your
uh,
camera froze, by the way. I don't know if it's the what happened there,
here,
but
I can reset it. Let me
okay.
reset it. Let me reset.
Sorry to interrupt you there.
No worries. Hold on. You might have to recapture it
All
because
good. If you want to just if you want to
video.
just restream it, I will fix that.
All right.
We got a pretty good tier list here together, guys. Yeah, this is good. This is really good. I totally agree with all of these placements. I think that Path of Exile 2 definitely cannot be in the top spot. Like Diablo 2, Path of Exile 1, those are the tens, guys. Like those are the ones that are like, goaded, will be goaded for time. I think Path of Exile 2 could get to a 10 though. We're still very early on its development right now. So there's room to grow with the game. Like if they work on all of these systems and implement more features and stuff like that, which I can only assume they will, since we're only in like point like 2 basically. Oh, he's back. Welcome back, man.
Okay.
Yeah. Basically just trying to fill the void here. But
Yeah.
yeah, basically like, Path of Exile 2, 8 or 9, really agree with that standpoint. Do I think it could be a 10? Absolutely, but that's not going to be for a little bit.
Okay. Oh, uh, I can't hear your mic for some reason.
You can't
Did
hear
you?
my mic.
Okay, no. Okay, it's good
Oh,
now. It's good now.
okay. I was gonna say, oh,
All
that's
right.
not good.
Okay, so we're good. But as far as tier list, other games, like I was thinking about like mid games, like Vikings Wolves of Midgard. Like I play a lot of action RPGs, like a lot of more obscure ones that people may not know about. Um, there's also like Dungeons of Sundaria. That was kind of an interesting game. It was like a really, really it felt like a really old MMO. Like I play all the MMOs too when I was like younger. I would play like Night
Yep.
Online, Conquer Online. Like I tried a lot of the free online games that like, people just mess around and they have fun with for a little bit.
Bro, did you ever play Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance when you were a kid? Like the
Yeah, for
Baldur's
the
Gate
PS2, right?
ARPG? Yeah, it was like an ARPG for PS2. It was so sick back in the day, bro. Damn, I just forgot about that. It was fire. There's also a
We
ton
need
of
to
really
bring up a
great like
tier list. I'm
but I feel like if we do a tier list like right now visually, like you're gonna have to like screen cap a bunch of game like thumbnails and stuff like that and put it together. I can do that like in post for this if you
okay,
wanna.
maybe
If
we
yeah,
maybe we
because I have
can
the
work
audio,
on
so I
that
can
in the
actually
future.
I can like physically make this tier list and that I can use that like as a visual resource for the pod. But yeah, maybe it's not the greatest time to do it like on
Yeah,
stream
because
because it's gonna take
this could be
forever.
another this could be another
Yeah,
hour conversation
one
because
hundred
I,
percent.
because like I was looking at lists, right? And I was like,
Yeah.
okay, there's Dragon Age. That was like a really cool game. Mass Effect. But like these are more in like a different direction. Like, yeah, they're action RPGs. Yes, there's loot in these games, but I don't know if you want the tier list to be like isometric, like Diablo like. Because that
I
that
think
would be kind
so.
of a different tier list.
It,
So
it
we
would
should
it would
probably keep it
streamline it
Diablo.
more. Yeah, it would
Yeah.
streamline it more because if it got more in leaning towards just RPGs like Mass Effect and stuff like that, like they do have action elements to it, but it's not nearly like what you would expect like an ARPG to be, basically.
Uh,
I'd have
oh,
to give you like a list of like 20 ARPGs and be like, go nuts on these. I think that I'll do that in the future for sure.
okay, you know what is a game that is kind of cool that is in the cyberpunk genre, but it is still like an isometric game is called The Ascent. I don't know if you ever looked at that game,
I don't
but
think
that
so. Let me check it out.
yeah, that
The
game actually
Ascent.
had a lot of potential. It was okay. I would consider it like a mid, like oh, you could have a couple hours of fun with it. It
Oh, the aesthetic
it
looks
had
cool though. Like it's
yeah
pretty unique.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that one like you have loot as well. And I like the way that the game looks, and it's not turn based by the way. I know that like some of the screenshots may look like it's a turn based, like I forget what those are called, where it's like a
Hmm.
tactical sort of game. But yeah, it's all like a full action on that one. But yeah, the ones I can recommend are honestly the ones that everyone recommends. There's not one except for like Last Epoch people pretty much know about, but the ones that people don't know about that I would give a recommendation to is the Slormancer. It does have a very cartoony look, and it doesn't take itself seriously. But that would be a game where if you like action RPGs, um, there is a lot of cool things in that game in terms of customization, which I like with action RPGs.
Yeah,
Dude,
that's
I
cool.
probably
And I
met.
and I love that you brought up the Minecraft one too, because I actually forgot that they made that. But it's cool that you actually have hands-on experience with it and can like recommend that as well. Because I think Minecraft obviously a huge franchise, but I feel like that the action RPG like spin-off that they made went kind of like under the radar for a lot of people.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I don't know if they've been releasing more content for the game, but at least like the base game. I mean, I don't know how much it is. It's probably like, let's see how much it is. If it's like $10, I could say recommend. But if it's like $60,
There's
I
no
want to hit.
way it's $60. There's no
Okay, I had to
way.
make sure though. Okay, because Minecraft Legends was that was like their other one. That one was $40. But like if it's like it's I don't know if it's free on like what is it, Xbox Game Pass, but because I think Microsoft owns Mojang, which is the studio that runs it. But it's $20. I think for $20, or you can wait to get it on sale for like $10. I think for $10, that game is definitely worth checking out if you like action RPGs. But the thing with action RPGs, I like them to look mature. Like I don't really
Mhm.
like them looking cartoony at all. I like it super mature. I like them super violent. I want the blood. Uh, but another game actually that I think that there is some fun to be had with it is called Undecember. Even though the game's pay to win, it is kind of grindy. There is some cool depth with it. If you like Path of Exile in terms of build creativity, even though again this game is going to be super pay to win for the late game, but you can have a lot of fun with the game. You can dump 10 hours and enjoy it. The bosses are pretty cool. They actually made the game too easy now, to be honest, to where like the bosses don't matter as much with the campaign, but later the game will get harder. But there is some cool depth with that game. So yeah, my recommendations of like other action RPGs that are okay on the tier list. I've considered these kind of like middle of the ground to go check out. Yeah, definitely check out that. Torchlight Infinite is pretty cool too. So if you want like I'd say these are kind of like middle of the ground in terms of action RPGs since we're talking about tier list. And I don't even feel like there is a point to mentioning like the bad games because usually when people want to hear about tier lists, they just
Yeah.
want to know like what other games are good to play.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
as far as bad action RPGs, oh,
No, we can we
we could
can we can end
go
it
ahead.
there, I think. I think we've
Yeah.
listed off quite a few. I think you've listed off a few that I've never heard of before. Like I've never heard of this Undecember game. It looks cool. I've never heard of this Loremancer. It's also cool. I do agree with your sentiment. Like again, I'm Diablo 2 brained. Like I like the dark, gritty atmosphere. I like the maturity. I like the sort of like evilness that comes with a lot of these ARPGs. But I'm not opposed to experiencing that in a different format. But I want to end off on one final question. This is a question that I love to ask all of my content creator guests. Um, Completely unrelated, but basically, if you had a piece of advice or some new advice that you could give to somebody who's maybe potentially thinking about getting into content creation or someone who's looking to basically take their content creation to the next level, how would you guide them and what advice would you give to that person?
I would say if you just want to grow, play one game. The easiest way to grow in any video game is to get to the top of the leaderboards because then people will look up your builds. Like I know for Diablo, that definitely helped me out. Like I used to do a lot of the leaderboard pushing in the earlier stages, and then I did get like a pretty nice boost because Blizzard featured me inside of the app, and we also hit rank one during that season. But pushing on the leaderboard, and if you put like YouTube or TV or TTV in your name, that can help out, especially with getting like the rank one. The difference between a rank one and a rank two is pretty big when it comes to just content creation because you can title your video rank one push or whatever, and a lot of other content creators do this as well, and it is good. So if you are getting into content creation, I mean, yeah, you can always upload your whatever build guides, but if you really want like that big boost, it's either playing with other people that can actually help out too if you do like collabs or whatever. But I think the number one way if you want to solo and have it be respectable is to get like a rank one push. And honestly, in a lot of action RPGs, it is going to be tough. So it's not like the easiest one, but making like a rank one or like if they do any ladder races, right? Ladder races are pretty popular in action RPGs. But even being high ranked in a lot of video games can also help. Like in Heroes of the Storm, I was rank one, or if you play like Overwatch or Marvel Rivals, they have a top 500 leaderboard. If you can get on either the top 500 specifically though, again, people are really looking at rank ones, but that's like the easiest fastest way to grow that's actually sustainable because sometimes people pop off and then they go away because they have like one funny clip. Because if you upload a clip, I know that this is kind of a popular thing people talk about, oh, just upload clips and stuff. I've had lots of videos hit like 1 million views, but that may garner like, okay, cool, you get a bunch of views temporarily, but that can't really hold people's interest for a longer period of time. And if you're looking to establish credibility, hitting high ranks in video games is probably well, if it's gaming related, obviously, then yeah. Because if it's a food review, I don't know. I mean, maybe if you're a food
Yeah.
reviewer, I mean, there's eating contests that could help out, but like, I think being able to either have like some sort of obscure thing that people aren't doing it could work, but it also has to be good. Because like if you do off meta builds, right? Because that's one area where some people like to play off meta. If the off meta build specifically in Diablo does not at least do Torment 4 content, then the build is considered bad, and there's no point to uploading really a bad build unless it does something funny, it breaks the game or something. Then by all means, go for it. But yeah, best advice is probably just to hit high ranks in video games for like a a community that will kind of stick around, but that then will follow fast because like, oh, this guy's rank 1, he must be good. I'm gonna follow him and see what other build guys he drops in the future. So that is probably my best suggestion.
Okay. I mean, not easily obtainable. I mean, I think, realistically speaking, like 99.9% of people are not going to hit rank 1 in any game they play. I mean, it's a good goal to have. But is there anything else from a content creation's perspective that you could say that might be like a not an A, like an S tier suggestion, like hitting like rank 1, but maybe like an A tier that like anybody can do? I know, like, obviously, making your content like can come in many different forms. So maybe you could speak to sort of like other forms of content that you've made or whatever that could help people as well.
I think making people laugh is an excellent way. So if you make like meme videos, like with the Diablo, there's a guy in the community named Frosty LaRue that makes funny
Hmm.
videos. Probably a lot of other PoE content creators that just make like funny clips that can get people to watch too. But the biggest thing that I think people can benefit from is to answer the question, why would people watch you over the current state of like the content creators? That's a really big question that you have to answer yourself. And if you're like, I don't know why, well, then the other people might not know why either. You could just throw out
Mm.
content and that can work. But if there's already an established community, people usually go to content creators that are already established, which that's the reality of it. Interestingly enough, I have a video kind of on this subject that I can plug in. It was like how to grow on YouTube and Twitch with like 0 viewers. Like, because a lot of people want to stream, but when you stream, you're going to always start off at 0, right? Um, let me see if I can maybe plug this in. Uh, and the interesting thing with this, okay, so this video was uploaded 7 years ago, and it's actually Fortnite when I was playing Fortnite. So
Okay.
interesting enough, you have to look at it as also from the viewpoint of that video that I uploaded has 120,000 views. So there is 120,000 people that are interested in growing as a new content creator, right? And you have to think about, well, there's only so many people that can watch you live at one given time. Now, obviously with YouTube, it's different, but people's time still has to it, be divided amongst all of the people. So if you're like, I want to get into action RPGs, right? Well, you're competing with all the other people that are already established. And the best question that you need to be able to answer is why would they watch you? Like in the earlier stages, I actually was one of like TikTok actually sent me like a package because I was one of the most popular streamers at the time for specifically Diablo. When the game first came out, the game was popping. I had like a bunch of videos hit like a 250,000 views on a build guide, and like you could watch some of the best content creators uploading the best rank 1 build guide, hitting a 250,000 views on Diablo right now is not very realistic. But when that game was popping off, I would play PvP. I was one of the only people that would play PvP consistently for several hours. No one plays PvP sadly in Diablo 4 anymore. But I would go in and there was like there's a lot of exploits in Diablo 4. There was one for PvP that was pretty overpowered that would give you like dodge, but it would reset when you would mount up. So I could kill pretty much anyone in the entire game without getting hit once because you would just abuse this mechanic of resetting certain. Um, it was like the next 8 attacks would be 100% dodge. Like they could not hit you, and then if you just stun them, they would just be dead.
Oh
So
my God.
so,
That's
like,
amazing.
I was doing something different and also being able to take on, like, several players at once. So, like, I'll probably actually, uh, upload a montage of PvP, but there's very few people that were doing PvP. So I was doing something different at the time, while I was playing Diablo 4 in the earlier stages, and then on top of that, I was good. Like, I could do 1v2s real easy. I could do 1v3s. I even had, like, a clip of, like, fighting, like, a whole clan. Like, I killed several players back to back to back, and I was solo. And so it's good content because it's like, oh, this guy's doing something that's very hard. Plus, it's also doing something that people aren't doing. So it's two different areas
Mm.
where I felt like that was really good. But again, unfortunately, there's no PvP right now. But in the future, if Diablo 4 or Path of Exile adds PvP, I would invest personally for me, I'd invest all my time into that because one, I enjoy that. Two, it's different. It's something that people aren't doing, and I think that that's probably gonna help out with views. But also, you can't be doing something so dumb. Like here's like an example of doing something dumb that I would think is a bad idea. If you just streamed in Diablo and was like, I'm going to be the #1 herb collector. Yeah, sure, no one's doing that. But is that interesting? No.
Right. Of
But
course.
you could do something more interesting that's on the side of not actually playing the game properly, like or like what people see as like the actual way to play the game. There are people that will sit there in their hideout and they will craft all day on Path of Exile, and they'll just be like, how much profit can we make off of this? Or people in Path of Exile will do the divination cards. They'll like upload videos of 100 openings of this divination card of like rings, and can we get anything good? There's a good content creator, MB Extreme, that does all these like crafting and like basically they're gambas. Basically, you take an investment and see how much can we make off of it, and then people watch that because they want to see what you got and they want to see, hey, is it profitable? So you have basically a video where it gives people knowledge, right? It gives them value, right? They're like, okay, is this worth investing into? And then on top of that, they may want to follow you. And I think that that is important because if you drop certain forms of content, like a highlight, they may not follow you. But if you drop like, guides and they can get value off of it, then that can work as well.
Right on, man. Thank you for sharing that. So, in summary, it sounds like obviously #1, get good, get to get rank 1 if you can, because clearly that gives you a huge boost. Obviously, you make waves in the community and stuff like that. But to follow that, kind of carve out sort of a way to differentiate yourself, and try to answer that question of like what separates you from other players or other people, and what's going to make other people watch your content basically over someone else's stuff. And that can come in all different shapes and sizes. Like you mentioned, there's different ways to like grab the attention of someone, doing something different, doing something quirky, standing out in that way, whatever that might be.
Yeah.
Right on, man. Dude, this is sweet. Thank you so much for coming on. At this point in the
Yeah,
podcast,
thanks
I'd
for
just like
having
to
me.
get, yeah, 100%. Just get you to plug yourself. Where can we find you, and what are you working on right now?
So you can follow me on Sladra everywhere. Right now, I'm currently doing a lot of Diablo content, but obviously with Path of Exile, I've already uploaded all the brand new bosses. So if you're interested in just watching a full like walkthrough guide and you're brand new to Path of Exile, or if you're new to Diablo, I cover both games extensively. Those are like my two main games in the action RPG genre. I also am a Marvel Rivals partner, so I kind of work with them, and I got to just play the new character that's coming out next week. There's early gameplay of that. So if you guys are interested in Marvel Rivals content, like if you like PvP sort of games, I like PvP a lot. That's why I'm just begging for the Diablo 4 team to add like ranked PvP, 2v2s, 3v3s. I'm hoping that Diablo 4 actually adds clan battles because like we have clans, but there's nothing to do with them. And I think that as far as action RPGs goes, this is actually almost another topic, but I want to plug it in real quick.
Yeah, yeah,
Is that I'm hoping that Diablo 4 adds clan battle because I think that that will keep some sort of incentive for a community to exist. Because like right now in Path of Exile and in Diablo, it's like, what's the point of a clan? If you could actually take your clan and put like you could put in a currency like wager, right? You could be like, all right, let's throw in 50 divines for our entire clan, and we're gonna fight this other clan. The winner takes all. I think that that'd be one of the coolest things. But
that would be
you can
super
find me on
cool.
yeah, you can find me in Slater everywhere. TikTok, YouTube, Twitch are the main areas, but I also post what is it, Instagram Reels. But most people are interested in obviously like streams and stuff, and so YouTube, TikTok, and Twitch, Sladra. That's
Sounds
where
good.
I'm
As
most
always,
active.
guys, there's going to be links in the description for Slager's YouTube channel, Twitch channel, all that stuff. So if you're interested in checking him out, I highly recommend it. He's been doing some awesome stuff on the Diablo 4 side of things. I already checked out his like new Secrets of the Atlas boss battles and stuff like that now that I'm not going into the game blind anymore. So make sure to check this guy out if you're not familiar with his stuff. Really great content creator. All right, my man. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to come chat with me. It's been an absolute pleasure. And best of luck with all the stuff going on. I hope you enjoy your Marvel Rivals time, and we'll talk soon.
Okay, thank you very much. Have a good one.
All right. Peace out, man.
Peace out.
All right, guys. We did it. We did it. We did the damn thing. Holy. We were yapping. It's so easy to just go like off about ARPGs for like time. Clearly, we're both very passionate. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the longer podcast tonight. Usually, I try to keep it to like 2 hours, like maximum, but we got into the tier list, and like I kind of want to like put together Slater's like tier list like visually now to help like support the the conversation. So if you guys enjoyed the podcast, please hit the like button. That helps a lot. Subscribe if you can, if you want to see more conversations between myself and more ARPG players. You listen very well, which is a tough thing to do. I mean, it's my show, so I want to give space to any and all of my guests to basically talk as much as they want to and express how they feel about certain things. There are points in the conversation that we didn't get to cover today because we kind of like really emphasized on certain things, but that's just the way it goes sometimes, man. So it's all good. But yeah, I'm really focusing on what the guest has to say and making sure that they can express their concerns and their opinions. Another thing that I would love for you guys to do is that if you can comment on the video upload, who you'd like to see next on the podcast. That's actually how we got Sladra on the pod today. Was basically one viewer was just like, "Yo, you should hit up Sladra to come on the pod. I would love to see a conversation of what he has to say and everything." So I just sent him an email and he got back to me and then we made it happen. So I'm definitely not opposed to reaching out, doing some outreach for the pod and just seeing who else is down. Like, let me know, guys. I'd love to. If you have anybody that you can suggest, please feel free to do so. All right, guys, please, enjoy the rest of your evening. I'm going to be away for 3 weeks starting tomorrow for work. Oh, better to cough. Excuse me. So I'm not going to be doing any streams or any podcasts live, but I'm going to be staggering these video releases. So next week, Lex's podcast comes out on Friday, and then the next Friday, Sladra's podcast is going to come out. So my channel's not going to be dead, but there's going to be minimal like stream time, sadly, which I will miss. But I'm going to be going on a 3-week work trip. So in the meantime, guys, I hope you have a wonderful evening, and I appreciate you guys hanging out, all the lurkers, all the chatters. You guys rock. Thank you so much. Oh, what's the next big thing you're working on? Ooh, I got ideas for my next big thing, but I'm not ready to share them yet. I have some ideas. I definitely think that these like few weeks away are going to help sort of like narrow down what I want to work on more. It's definitely going to be ARPG related. It's definitely going to be PoE related. But I can't really speak to what I'm going to do next because 1, I don't know. 2, it's too early to say right now. So you'll have to wait and see. I will release some sort of like preview about it eventually, but let's just say I got some stuff to work with from my most latest video that I can definitely like make some more content about that. So that's all I'm going to give you guys. Anyway, thank you so much, guys, for hanging out, and I'll